The guy played the computer game carefully and for a long time, striving to become the best. After 3 days of continuous play, he finally took the first place in the ranking. Going outside, the young man reflected on his boring school days and wished that reality was like a game where you could constantly get stronger. Looking at his phone, he realized that he had reached the top of the ranking, but now he had nothing to play again, and the time of lessons had already come. Thinking, the guy did not notice how he found himself in the middle of the road, where he was hit to death by a car, but he did not care because he was already tired of the boring world. A rebirth took place and he became the son of the Lingzun family, which was joyfully announced by his new father, lifting the baby in his arms. The man lifted the newborn baby into his arms, rejoicing at the arrival of his long-awaited son. As he lowered the baby, the father noticed the baby's stillness and became alarmed, thinking something was wrong with the baby. He pinched the baby's cheek, and at that moment the reincarnated soul of the protagonist entered him. The baby shouted, "Wah!" which pleased and comforted the new father. The overjoyed father tossed his son upward, confident that he couldn't be in trouble. Floating in the air, the child tried to make sense of the situation, remembering only the collision with the truck. He wondered if he had really been reborn and why he was now flying into the unknown. As he fell, he felt a familiar sensation and was convinced that he had been reborn in another world. Realizing that he could not die for nothing, he realized that his father had saved him by jumping up and catching him on the fly. The little boy smiled with relief, realizing that this world was not as boring as the old one. 8 years later, his name was Jin, but the memories of his past life in the modern world were still with him. He now lived in a world of spiritual strength and cultivation, so different from his previous reality. Since birth, he had lived with his parents in the countryside, considering them to be ordinary people. The daily routine consisted of practicing and learning new techniques, which was far more exciting than a simple game. Cultivation allowed one to become stronger, and there was nothing more exciting to a young boy. In their world, cultivation was divided into 10 ranks, and the boy's mother, watching him train, was pleased with his talent as a cultivator. Knowing his mother's achievement, Sijin calculated that it would take 80 years to reach rank 10 through normal means. Getting frustrated, he decided to look for unconventional strengthening methods to shorten his cultivation time. Shijin's parents followed the old man, saying that their 16-year-old son could already enter his school. They didn't mind, but they thought he was too strong for a normal school. The old lady took offense, saying they were underestimating her school, which had many talented students. The father, smiling embarrassedly, admitted that they didn't know the true limits of their child's strength. All the while, Zijin was creating his weapon, the most accurate shotgun in the modern world. The kid found a blacksmith who added explosives, flint, and thunderstone to the gun for electromagnetic acceleration, as well as infusing spiritual power into the bullets. This weapon was to be the beginning of a new era in this world, and just at that moment, a huge monster ran out at the young man. Deciding to test the gun, the boy pulled the trigger 3 times, but the monster was only left with 3 small wounds on the side. Realizing flint and thunderstone to defeat such a strong monster, he didn't lose heart. He decided to use a homemade grenade made of flint. Pulling the pin with his teeth, he threw it right into the monster's mouth. The explosion of the grenade attracted the attention of his parents and teacher, who were passing nearby in the forest. They rushed to the scene and saw the boy next to the defeated monster. Everyone froze in shock, not expecting such a marvelous result from young Jin. The teacher said that although Jin had killed the monster, he was still at the level of a rank 3 spiritual master, and it was very dangerous to fight a level 5 monster. He added that such a monster could only be defeated by a spiritual commander. Without listening to it, Jin thought that the teacher was praising him without realizing the true meaning of the words. The old man invited the young man to study in his school, where the boy would learn common sense because following his parents, he could lose it even more. He also added that he would hide the student's identity to prevent a commotion among the other students, which caused the boy to wonder and ask about the necessity of this. The teacher explained that his father and mother were ranked 10 spiritual deities, and Jin was their son. The boy cried out in surprise and anger, not understanding how those two could be spiritual deities. The parents were embarrassed that their son had called them spiritual deities, and the teacher's reaction was angry, because he didn't understand how he could not even talk to his son about it. Spiritual deity was a level reached at the pinnacle of cultivation, and in the entire world, only a few people had accomplished it. The Royal Training Academy, where Jin was invited to, was the finest school in the continent, and was famous for training outstanding cultivators. The boy remembered that his parents had also once studied at this prestigious academy. His mother couldn't hold back her tears as she saw her grown-up son off, while his father consoled her, promising to continue the honeymoon after his son left. Heejin was in a hurry to get away from his parents' words, but he was followed by shouts about the exam and his superiority. The boy didn't like it and shouted angrily for them to stop bullying, as there were many other students in the schoolyard who heard it. Hearing the shouting, one of the guys decided to make fun of Jiejin by asking him since when children were brought to the Royal Academy exams by their parents. The students sympathized with the newcomer, noticing the approach of a bully from the Qin family, known for his antics, relying on his father's status as an army officer. Remaining unperturbed, Zijin walked past, concentrating on finding the examination room. The arrogant bully loudly called out to Jiejin, not expecting that his defiant words would simply be ignored. The rookie calmly turned around, skillfully pretending that he didn't hear the rude reference to him. The young master from the Qin family growled that he would teach him to listen and began to create a fireball. Shijin smiled in surprise, seeing the primitiveness of the magic attack he was preparing with slight disdain. The arrogant opponent thought that the newcomer was frightened by his supposedly famous fire martial art. In reality, Jiejin simply remembered how easy it was to learn such simple magic back in his early childhood. He instantly sensed the striking weakness of his opponent's spiritual power, barely reaching the level of an ordinary person. Taking a deep breath, the protagonist deftly exhaled a stream of cold air, instantly extinguishing the boastful fireball. The completely stunned young man from the Qin family stiffened in confusion, unable to understand why his boastful magic didn't work. Shijin condescendingly explained that he had simply temporarily removed the oxygen around the hapless opponent's hand. The opponent perplexedly asked about the oxygen, and Saijin, realizing the gaffe, cleverly dodged the explanation. Enraged by the humiliation, the young master of the Qin family furiously rushed towards Jiejin with the intention of attacking physically. Nonchalantly turning around, the protagonist once again used his technique, exhaling cold air directly into the attacker's face. The bully suddenly felt his breath catch, as if an invisible hand was squeezing his throat. He collapsed to the ground, gulping for air with his mouth, and Jiejin marveled at the strength of his skill, the first time he had used it on a human. The young man was joined by a girl who praised him for his action, for she didn't know what to do when she first encountered this bully. Mujilan politely introduced herself, and Jiejin, remembering his previous awkwardness with girls, embarrassedly responded to the greeting. The companion remarked with sincere admiration on Jiejin's impressive strength, to which he modestly replied, downplaying his abilities. Together, they headed to the hall where the disciples were to channel their energy into special stones that measured the level of strength. Shijin watched the others carefully, noting that most had reached the level of spiritual master, even though they were just ordinary guys. Mujilan approached the stone, and her incredible power amazed not only Shijin, but everyone present. It turned out that she was a princess of a neighboring country who had already reached the 4th rank of cultivation. Walking to the stone, Shijin greeted the returning princess and sincerely praised her impressive result. Now it's my turn, the young man thought as he channeled all of his spiritual power into the measuring artifact. Suddenly, the stone crackled and shards shattered, injuring Zijin, who hurriedly withdrew the energy. After stopping the flow of power, the stone only showed a 2nd rank, causing those around him to be perplexed. Someone present scornfully remarked that 2nd-ranked people had no place in this test. Only Mujilan, who was standing nearby, realized the uniqueness of the situation. No one had broken the measuring stone before. Zijin froze by the destroyed artifact, pondering over his failure in restraining strength. The entrance exam continued in the backyard of the academy, where all the entrants had gathered. The teachers announced the start of the practical portion, drawing the students' attention to the new rules. The participants had to gain 50 points in 2 hours by destroying demons of different ranks. It was allowed to hunt creatures up to the 4th rank, avoiding dangerous monsters of the 5th level. As the challenge began, everyone rushed into the forest in search of demons, eager to show off their abilities. Relying on his keen senses, Zijin identified the direction where the smell of monsters was coming from. A disciple ran nearby, chasing after the cute bunny and begging him not to run away. Suddenly, something lightning fast flew past and struck the rabbit before the hapless hunter could catch up. It turned out to be Jiejin, sitting in a tree, who had aptly hit the target, apologizing to the upset student. The angry student recognized the second-ranked rookie as the prey snatcher and resented his insolence. Jijin joked about the rules of the games, but his opponent grabbed his shoulder and threatened revenge for insulting the Yin family. Suddenly, a stranger appeared and intervened, reminding him of the prohibition of mentioning titles in the academy. The savior turned out to be Lin Yun, the eldest son of the Lin clan, who had already reached the 4th rank and was considered a genius. The attacker, realizing the possible punishment for breaking the rules, decided to quickly flee from the scene of the conflict. As he fled, he continued to shout threats at Xiejin, promising violent revenge the next time they met. Left alone, Zijin thanked Lin Yun, who noted that many people were afraid to socialize with him. The eldest son of the Lin clan offered to fight alongside the lad, extending his hand for a handshake. Zijin happily agreed, secretly planning to study the abilities of a 4th-rank cultivator. At this time, the teachers in the academy were monitoring the map showing the movements of the students during the exam. Most of the participants possessed rank 3 strength. Only a few stood out with rank 4 strength. The teachers realized that rank 4 tasks were difficult to accomplish alone and required teamwork. As they walked through the forest, Lin told them that many of the candidates were scions of noble families who were facing real danger for the first time. "We have the perfect plan. You on defense, I attack," Yun started to say, but suddenly became wary when he heard strange sounds. They were surrounded by 2-headed 4th-rank demon dogs, ready to kill the students that hour. Realizing the responsibility, Lin Yun decided to quickly deal with the threat, protecting the frightened Shi Jin, who was frozen. However, the protagonist was not frozen in place out of fear. He was looking at the 2-headed dogs in surprise and pondering the reasons for their unusual appearance. Lin Yun used magic, creating sharp ice crystals and aiming them at the nearest monster. Standing over the defeated demon, the savior thought that it would be difficult to deal with this threat alone. Turning back to Sai Jin, he froze in shock. His partner had already dealt with all the other wolves. Observing the map, the teachers noticed that some students had already encountered a rank 4 demon. Suddenly, they saw the demons disappear, leaving the 2 students alone, and realized that this was the work of the young master of the Lin clan, because with his strength, a 5th-level demon could be defeated. The second mentor explained, the top-ranked demon had been specially placed to assess the student's ability to evade threats. His colleague pointed out that the death of the main monster would end all battles and end the trial early. The old man, listening to the conversations, realized that this was Sai Jin's doing and mentally asked him not to cause trouble. Lin, realizing the unusual nature of his partner, warned him about the rank 5 demonic beast ahead. Si Jin, feigning worry, said that he couldn't face such a strong opponent. Thinking about it, Yun suggested that there might be an inexperienced disciple ahead who needed protection. Following the map, the teachers wondered why any of the students were heading towards a dangerous monster. Climbing up a tree, Mujilan carefully watched the slumbering top-ranked monster. The girl decided that killing this monster would guarantee her admission into the academy. Mujilan attacked the demon with a powerful magic strike, putting all her strength into it. However, the monster didn't even flinch, making the girl doubt her abilities. The sounds of battle and sudden gusts of wind made Lin Yun and Xie Jin wary. Realizing the threat from the awakened rank 5 demon, Lin insisted on retreating immediately. Mujilan continued to attack, daring to make a desperate leap toward the demon. A worthy opponent. Normal methods won't work. I'll have to use that technique, she thought. Before she could complete the thought, the girl found herself knocked down by the monster, ready to destroy everyone around her. Thrown back by the blow, the girl flew upwards, coughing and realizing her powerlessness in the face of impending doom. The unexpected surprise was the appearance of Xie Jin, who caught Mujilan before she hit the ground. After making sure she was safe, the young man ordered everyone to leave the dangerous area immediately. Xie Jin noted a sense of déjà vu, comparing the monster to the creature living near his home. His partner demanded action, marveling at Sai Jin's familiarity with high-ranked demons. The young man judiciously pointed out the dangers of fighting a rank 5 creature, suggesting they retreat. Lin recalled the easy victory over a rank 4 dog, accusing Xie Jin of hiding his true strength. Sighing, Xie Jin took out a grenade, activated it, and threw it towards the demon. With a lightning-fast reaction, he made everyone lie down, protecting them from the powerful explosion that followed. The shocked companions struggled to realize the fact that the 5th-ranked demon was dead. The teachers perplexedly watched the defeated monster's mark on the map disappear. The old mentor expressed his dissatisfaction at yet another problem created by Xie Jin and Lin Yun. Another group of disciples preparing to fight the demon rabbit were surprised by the unexpected escape of those. The unprecedented killing of a top-ranked demon in an exam for the first time in 300 years threatened to end the test prematurely. In order not to lose students, the old man proposed to admit all candidates this year. After the exams, the Royal Academy held an orientation for the new students. The girl persistently questioned Zijin about his abilities, while Lin tried to restrain her. Yun stood up for his friend, reminding him that everyone had a past they didn't want to talk about. Headmaster Li Xian came up on stage to congratulate the new students. He warned that enrollment is just the beginning, and one should not relax. The headmaster emphasized that only strength was valued in the school, and the weak would be ruthlessly weeded out. He mentioned that the academy had produced many spiritual masters, and most of the teachers were of high rank. The students and teachers of the academy participated in the recent war, helping to establish peace. Li Qin said that their strength kept the continent stable and prosperous. Shijin set his goal to work hard to quickly reach the rank of spiritual emperor. The guys behind heard his words and pointed out that the school was full of geniuses, but only a few reached rank 8. Lin Yun intervened in the conversation, saying that if this sounded from Jiejin, he probably wasn't joking. The principal asked the disciple who had killed the rank 5 demon to come up on stage. The young man shushed the 2 guys who didn't believe in his strength and proudly walked onto the stage. Lin pointed his finger at the main character, confirming that he was the one who had killed the powerful demon. The guys' faces changed and could only manage to utter a surprised expression. What? Jin walked up to the stage, stood beside the principal, coughed, and began to pick up the words for his speech. The character couldn't believe that he was afraid to answer in class before, but now he was speaking in front of everyone. He said that they were now classmates and should be friends and help each other develop. The students started shouting that he was a rank 2 weakling and should not consider himself cool. Upset by the reaction, the young man depressedly started to walk down from the stage, thinking that he was unlucky in school. Li Qin stopped him and advised him not to stand out. Otherwise, there would be trouble every day. The kid confidently said that no one could beat him anyway, and that was what worried the principal. The old man advised him not to use such tricks in front of everyone so as not to attract unnecessary attention. The next day, the teacher warned that there would be a test in the spiritual arts class with a target attacking the best techniques. The students immediately started summoning magic at the same time, filling the air with energy and glowing symbols. Mujalan used arrow breath, a technique that compressed the air into an arrow shape and secured it with spiritual pressure. When the arrow reached its target, the shape disappeared. The compressed air exploded and shattered the statue to pieces. The girl watched proudly as everyone around admired her and asked to teach her this technique. Shijin announced his turn as he headed toward the starting position, and someone in the crowd mockingly inquired about the abilities of a second-rank weakling. The young man decided to be less active and simply repeat after the previous student, using the arrow breath at 30%. The arrow released by Jiejin hit the target, leaving only a small crack, causing the spectators to be disappointed. Jin, chuckling to himself, recognized the girl's superiority in using the technique. Jalan was seething with anger, realizing that the newcomer had instantly copied her unique skill. Oh, that's crap, Jin muttered, realizing that he had accidentally unleashed his potential. The lesson ended and the guy decided to leave, thinking that learning spiritual arts in such a chaotic environment was a bad idea. A girl suddenly appeared behind a pillar, making Jin flinch and contemplate running away. Attempting to run away but quickly tiring, he inquired about the reason for her persistent pursuit. The girl insisted on explaining his unexpected abilities demonstrated in class. The young man offered to discuss it tomorrow, citing important matters, but she couldn't understand what could be more important. It turned out there was a sale on Taobao, where all necessities were 10 yuan each. The princess decided to go to the market with him, squeezing through the crowd, and the guy was perplexed as to why she had come to a poor man's sale. The girl said that although she was a princess, her country was no richer than this one, so she asked to be treated like an ordinary girl. A sudden strong push in the crowd sent the confused girl straight into the arms of the surprised Zijin. She involuntarily pressed her breasts against him, causing the young man to feel pleasant excitement and a rapid heartbeat. Closing his eyes, Jin enjoyed the unexpected closeness, trying to hide his embarrassment. The embarrassed girl apologized for the collision, trying to pull away, but Jin, hiding his excitement, assured that everything was fine. Finally, a vendor appeared in front of them, and they, not holding back, started ordering everything. The princess took a soft sheep which reminded her of her homeland, where there are many nomads with endless pastures. She described the beauty of the night sky, the reflection of the moon in the lakes, and the light wind swaying the grass in the steppe. Watching the princess holding the toy, Sijin asked if she missed home, but the girl couldn't answer. After giving the sheep to the vendor, she asked for a cultivation talisman, surprising her companion. The young man wondered why she didn't buy everything she needed for training. The princess explained that this money was earned by people's hard work, so she couldn't squander it unless she earned it herself. Like a true gentleman, the guy took all the purchases and carried them himself, feeling pathetic shopping with his non-existent girlfriend. Walking through the forest, the girl noticed 2 stumps and offered to rest. The young man happily agreed, threw his purchases on the ground, and asked why the princess didn't want to get stronger, surprising her with the question. The princess explained that her small country depended on the support of strong powers, realizing her role as a political tool through a potential marriage. The girl expressed her hope for the opportunity to protect her nation by becoming a spiritual deity. She confessed that Sijin's words about achieving the highest rank inspired her, despite the seeming impossibility. Sijin suddenly turned away from the girl and started rummaging through the shopping, looking for something. He pulled out a toy sheep, held it out to the princess, and suggested that they train together in the future. The girl, taking the toy, could not hold back her tears, touched by this unexpected gesture. To hide her emotions, she leaned against Sijin, surprising him with this sudden display of affection. Quickly gathering her thoughts, the princess jumped up and suggested that they immediately start training together in a duel. The boy thought he was being recognized for the first time, but quickly pushed those thoughts away, suggesting that they postpone the conversation. Mujalan insisted on an immediate duel, saying that she had already notified the academy administration. The teacher assigned as an observer reluctantly arrived at the scene where the 2 freshmen were meeting. Upon seeing the participants, the teacher became interested, remembering their success on the entrance exams. The boy began to panic and asked the teacher if he could refuse to participate in the duel. The teacher replied that the rules did not forbid it, but frequent refusals and losses in duels between arrogant students were considered a disgrace. He added that this was exactly what an outsider was for, and Zijin began to laugh. The teacher expressed curiosity to watch their duel, declining the student's request and warning that his opponent might finish him off. Shijin tried to dissuade the girl, citing his low rank, but she only laughed at his excuses. The girl rhetorically asked if it was nonsense, noting his talent and desire, and wanted to fight him at full strength. Listening to the conversation, the boy noticed the ever-increasing wind. The teacher saw his incomprehension and confirmed the speculation, for the girl could indeed use the element of wind. He explained that spiritual energy affects natural abilities, more often occurring in the form of fire, less often lightning and ice, and wind has the weakest damage. If a girl suddenly attacks a level 5 foul beast with thick skin, only a bruise will be left afterward. However, the force of the wind was more than enough to mess up a person's body, and the guy felt the wind pass over his arm, leaving a strong cut. Sijin grabbed the wound, not realizing when the princess had time to do this. The teacher pointed out that despite the low damage, wind attacks were hard to predict. He added that due to the underestimation of this element, the tactics for dealing with it were poorly developed. Apparently, the princess already understood exactly how to fight using this element. The young man created a shield in an attempt to protect himself from the attacking wind, but the air in the attack was dense and fast. It was hard to see. Shijin realized that he didn't have time to use defensive techniques against the opponent's swift attacks. The girl pondered mysteriously that victory was hers, and there was no way her opponent could win no matter what he did. Seeing Shijin turn to flee, Mujalan suspected that he would resort to trickery again, remembering the strange item he had used against a rank 5 demon. The student, remembering his promise to the headmaster, decided not to use any unusual techniques and ran towards the girl. Mujalan, noticing Zijin's approach, applied the dragon cyclone technique, creating a huge vortex. The young man abruptly froze in front of this phenomenon, not understanding its nature and scale. The teacher wondered how the princess was able to use a rank 6 technique on such a scale with only a rank 4 technique. It turned out that the girl had skillfully manipulated the wind, creating only the visual effect of a powerful technique. The mentor said that it was so simple and for diversion, then threw a pebble directly into the center of the vortex. Right, young man, something inexplicable and frightening began to happen in the center of the vortex. Shijin drew his sword and easily deflected the blow, astonishing the teacher with his swordsmanship. The teacher couldn't believe his eyes that the student had used his sword to repel the attack, and didn't regret the decision to be the observer of the entertaining fight. Next, the teacher saw the girl's excellent use of the wind element and the boy's mastery of the sword. The opponent angrily asked if the opponent thought of opposing her, using only a sword and underestimating her. Shijin confidently stated that he had figured out Mujalan's tactics and would be able to stop any number of her strikes with just one sword, challenging her to come up with something new. And so it happened. The young man fought perfectly with his sword against the element of wind, moving instinctively and ahead of his consciousness. The teacher noticed that after the student picked up the sword, his indecision disappeared, and the teacher could not understand how he had learned to control the weapon in such a way. Such excellent swordsmanship was a credit to the boy's father, who had taught him the basics of swordsmanship from infancy. Yijin was happy about it because a real man should be able to wield a sword, and the longer he was in this world, the more he liked it. His father had told him that the sword was an extension of the hand, but they were not exactly alike, as the weapon had blades for chopping, cutting, stabbing, and piercing. To his son's perplexed question about special techniques, the father answered in the negative, emphasizing the importance of practice, which made the boy question his parents' strength and teaching methods. The father tried to cheer up the frustrated son by offering to practice together without special techniques, but the self-confident child decided to develop fencing techniques on his own. When the father said he was about to attack and asked if the boy was ready, he readily agreed. But when Dad accelerated and attacked, there was fear and shock on the boy's face. After the battle, the defeated and tired child sat on the ground. It seemed that his father wanted him dead, for he was covered in scratches. The mother, seeing her exhausted son on the ground, reprimanded her husband for his cruelty, but he explained that he had to be stricter because of the boy's stubbornness during training. From the age of 6 and for 10, Saijin practiced fencing in all kinds of bad weather, and he enjoyed it more and more every day. It was his father's lessons that prepared Zijin to withstand Mujalan's wind attacks. The young man said that it was his turn now and rushed forward with a punch at his opponent. He realized that he only needed to get close, and when he was quite close, he jumped up and swung his sword, asking how she would be able to repel this blow. The princess was not confused and immediately used the 4th-ranked technique, Arrow of the Gods. The teacher got a little upset and said that the guy's iron sword wouldn't be able to withstand the princess's strike, so they needed to stop them before anyone got hurt. The student swung his sword using the 1st-rank Thunderstrike technique. The teacher froze in place, looking surprised at the fight, even forgetting about wanting to stop it. The fact was that the young man had aimed his sword at the Arrow of the Gods and had even managed to hold it for a while. Still, he managed to defeat the wind attack at the cost of destroying his own sword. Approaching the girl, the boy offered a draw, considering the result of the duel impressive. In response, he only received a fist strike to his chin and flew slightly off the ground. Falling at his teacher's feet, Shijin heard Mujalan's confirmation of Mujalan's victory. Getting up, Shijin asked Mujalan about her aspiration to be the best. The girl rebuked him for being inattentive, claiming that in a real battle, all means are good. Mujalan hurriedly left, unwilling to continue the conversation after the winner was announced. The young man was puzzled by Mujalan's behavior, but the teacher came over and explained that according to the custom of the country, a girl of that age must agree to marry a man if she loses to him in a fight. The hero was shocked by the corrupt customs, but the teacher encouraged him and asked him with a smile if he regretted losing, because if he had been more careful, he might have already had a wife. Leaving, the tutor said that the princess also did not seem to be very interested in the guy, but hastened to remind him that study is more important than early love. The next morning, Zhaijin and Mujalan met, and the young man suggested they go to class together, to which the girl agreed. On the way, they talked, and the princess admitted that at first she thought he would only resort to strange techniques, not expecting a masterful swordsmanship. Classmates discussed the pair in surprise, spreading rumors about Shijin's accidental victory over the undead and his entry into the academy by Blatt. Shijin walked by, keeping a nonchalant expression on his face and pretending not to hear the angry gossip. The surprised princess asked how he could walk so calmly and if he really didn't care about what was being said about him. The guy really didn't care, as he was used to it because he was always treated like that in school before. But now, having become stronger than them, he doesn't care about their opinion. The girl said that if she didn't know him, She would have thought that he looked like Shi Zhang and couldn't resist slapping him, after which they laughed. As they continued on their way, they heard some guy making a girl named Lin Bo bow in greeting. Gao Chen accused Lin Bo of not wanting to socialize with them, but the girl parried that he couldn't hurt her at school. The young man assumed that it was their classmate Lin Bo, and she was in trouble. Lin Yun, who came up behind the friends, explained that Gao Chen was the eldest son of the Gao family, and Lin Bo's family could be said to be an offshoot of them. After hearing about the oppression of the Lin family due to his swordsmaster father's illness, Zijin decisively intervened and called his friend to join. Lin Yun was against it because the relationship between aristocrats is very complicated and it would be uncomfortable for him to interfere, but promised to support if necessary. Mujilan called Lin Yang hypocritical, and Zijin, stretching his arms, resolutely headed out to deal with the offenders. As he approached the group, the hero drew everyone's attention, calling for the bullying to stop and reminding them that hurting a girl was a disgrace for a mature guy. Gao Chen arrogantly brushed aside the interference of the second-ranked brat, causing a heated discussion among those present, shocked at the audacity of confronting the eldest son of the Zhao family. Enraged, Gao Chen roughly grabbed Ling Bo's arm, yanking it sharply, and ordered the brat to immediately get away. Seeing such cruel behavior with the girl, Zijin ordered him to get his filthy hands off her before he broke them. Gao Chen tried to slyly draw Lin Yun into the heated conflict, but the latter categorically refused to participate in the fight. After all, it was not his conflict. One of Gao Chen's aides shouted to the guy that his protector wouldn't help, and to remember that the students in the academy weren't rednecks like him. Zijin nonchalantly responded to the provocation, inwardly preparing himself for the imminent attack of Gao's enraged aides. The hero used a rank 1 technique called glaciation, controlling spiritual energy to make the ice thin and smooth that the attacker slipped on. The guy then used the rank 1 technique, Fire Stream, directing magic at the people lying on the ice. The arrogant opponent loudly scoffed at the seemingly negligible weakness of Zijin's cunning attack. The hero calmly explained that his true goal was only to gently melt the ice, not to seriously harm his opponents. He noted that water was an excellent conductor, but no one in this world knew the meaning of the word, and looked at the guy in surprise, waiting for an explanation. The resourceful young man effectively demonstrated the impressive power of the electroshock technique, instantly striking all the opponents in the water with a powerful current. Standing over the defeated enemies, Zijin couldn't help but ironically remark that only the simplest kindergarten techniques were enough to completely defeat them. No one could figure out if it was a joke, and if the guy really had a second rank since he had downed 5 people using first and second rank techniques. Gao Chen angrily shouted, "Freak!" and lunged at Lin Yun, accusing him of deliberately sicking this puppy on him to hinder him. Lin Yun replied that it was their squabble, nothing to do with him. Ling Yun wryly remarked that Gao Chen, without getting a scratch, was making unfounded claims and insulting his friend as if he was looking for trouble. Angry and offended, the eldest son of the Gao family walked past the protagonist, pushing him with his shoulder. Xie, approaching Lin Bo, inquired about her well-being after the incident. Gao Chen, without going too far, told the victim not to think like she was free forever since she had been stood up for this time. Xie didn't like this treatment and suggested that the offender repeat the fight, noting that he was talking a lot. Lin Bo held the hero back, thanking him again since they had only met a couple times in class and he wanted to help her. The girl said that she needed to finish off Gao Chen herself, so she pulled out her sword and challenged him to a duel. Chen, barely containing his anger, accused the two of insolence, rebuking Lin Bo for disregarding the family hierarchy and disrespecting his clan. Gao went on to say that a low-grade family had spawned an equally low-grade family while creating magic with his hand behind his back. Lin Yun saw this in time and shouted to Xie and Lin Bo to be careful. The eldest son of the Gao family shouted that people like them had no place among the living and attacked the guy and girl in front of them. Lin Yun said that things were bad because this family used unusual fire in their techniques that was stronger than normal fire, but the princess called it a trifle. Mujilan had met many amazing swordsmen, so when she saw Lin Bo's posture, she realized that she was much stronger than Gao Chen. Not only was the girl able to repel the attack, but she also decided to attack her opponent. However, her victory was hindered by a strong rank 7 breathing technique. When the protagonist realized that Lin Bo was in danger, he couldn't stand by and rushed to help. Once on the ground, they did not see the old man walking towards them, who was using rank 7 magic, wanting to kill Lin Bo. As they approached, the man attacked the girl with powerful magic, confirming his hostile intentions. The young man borrowed Lin Bo's sword, preparing to resist the blows of the dangerous old man. Jin said that strong flames needed wind and began to swing his sword, but his attempts were futile, for the fire was too great and his strength was lacking. The old man doubted that the village lad would have anything to oppose him, calling him too arrogant. The hero explained that he had deliberately provoked the enemy, waiting for the moment when the flames would cut off the paths of retreat. When the flames almost engulfed the young man, he straightened up and threw a grenade with the pin pulled. There was a deafening explosion that shook the surrounding area and for a moment obscured the raging flames. Shijin managed to grab the girl and roll out of the flames with her. Upon seeing them, the princess and Lin Yun ran up to them, worried about their condition. The guy was fine, but the blast wave was too strong, causing Lin Bo to lose consciousness. Lin Yun, unable to hold back, angrily demanded an explanation from Gao Shijin. The disciplinary committee teacher, who was Gao Chen's uncle, replied that he was in charge of discipline in the academy and should teach the troublemakers a lesson. Wichan assumed that the teacher was abusing his position by covering for his nephew. The young man menacingly asked if he wanted to teach him a lesson, because in his opinion, it was the teacher who was causing trouble for people. The indignant mentor's veins swelled, and he interrogated what the student had said. Gao Chen approached his uncle, whom he hurriedly sent to class, saying that it was none of his business. The hero accused Gao Chen of attacking Lin Bo, rebuking the teacher for being biased and trying to avoid responsibility. The people around him understood the wrongdoing of the mentor, but did not dare to say anything. And after Saijin's statement, they looked at him from a different perspective. As they were leaving, the teacher said that in order to duel, they had to formally submit a request in the presence of a witness, which they didn't do, so he stopped them. The young man angrily objected that the nephew had raised his hand to the girl first, and if anyone needed to be stopped, it was him. After all, the teacher had almost killed Lin Bo. The teacher angrily replied that if he wanted to kill her, the rookie would not have been able to stop him and calmly walked away, hoping to repel the blow. Gao Chen, standing beside his uncle, told the young man to stop embarrassing himself and promised to talk to him next time. The hero shouted in, "Next time?" and summoned magic, preparing to attack. Gao Jin fearfully asked what the man was up to and tried to create a defense against his magic, but realized that even an instantly used technique wouldn't be enough. The teacher couldn't believe that he didn't have time to react to the weakling's strike while possessing rank 7. His nephew cried out fearfully, seeing that his uncle was clearly losing the fight. Shi Jin swooped down on the guy with the sword, knocking him back with a blow, and offered to find out who was better. Once free, the uncle gathered himself to help his nephew by shouting that the brat was finished. But the young man didn't give up. He pulled the caps of 3 grenades simultaneously, preparing for a decisive throw. The teacher shouted again about the end of the student as he turned around and sharply threw his secret weapon at him. They did not have time to explode as the principal came to the rescue and disarmed them with magic, for otherwise the educational building would have to be repaired again. In addition to disarming the grenades, he also decided to disarm the teacher, who was clearly out of line, by grabbing his arm and preventing him from hitting the student. The principal said that out of respect for the teacher's grandfather, his good friend, he would not remove him, but he would suspend him from the disciplinary committee. After dealing with the situation, Li Xin called out to Jiajin to follow him. The obedient disciple went, before turning to his friends and asking them to take care of Ling Bo. The old man turned to Gao Cheng, ordering him to return home. Think about his behavior and wait for a message about being able to return to his studies. The student was angry with the hero, but did not dare to do anything about it, fearing a harsher punishment. The hero accused Gao Chen of attacking Lin Bo, rebuking the teacher for being biased and trying to avoid responsibility. On the way to the office, the headmaster turned to the student walking behind him and said that the trinkets were quite interesting, asking him to keep them for study. The young man was pleased at the principal's interest in his homemade weapon, but asked to keep it a secret. The headmaster asked how the young man planned to escape the explosion, but he admitted that he was prepared to die in battle. Suspecting something wrong, the principal began to speculate about the reasons for the conflict, and Jie Jin was afraid of revealing too much. On the other hand, he didn't want to lie, but he was just about to tell the truth when the old man took him by the shoulder and said that everyone had secrets, and it was okay if he didn't want to reveal them. The old man grinned and asked if the young man was gathering a harem, since everything was leading to the guy dating Mujalan, but he stood up for Lin Bo. The guy explained that he just hates it when someone is bullied and the rest of us do nothing. He said that he used to be cowardly and distrustful, seeing a lot of injustice in the world, but being weak and timid, he couldn't change anything. The hero pointed out that no matter what world you live in or what you do, only when your state of mind comes to normal will you truly stay alive. Xie Jin explained that he had decided to always do the right thing in an effort to become stronger and reach the 10th rank of spiritual perfection. Leaving the principal's office, Xie Jin felt extremely tired, puzzled as to why he had so many problems on his first day of school. The guy was frustrated that he couldn't just spend time with his friends, go out with someone and enjoy school life, and yet the principal was also looking out for him. Recently, Li Shen reminded him of his special status, asking him not to disturb others and to take care of school property. Angered by the order not to damage the property, the hero swung his hand to hit the pillar, shocking a passing teacher that someone was going crazy at the beginning of the school year. The young man saw the pros of studying at the school, striving to reach the level of Mujalan and Lin Yun on his own. His rich battle experience and passing over 100 games gave him the reception to defeat the 6th rank. But the lad wondered if it was enough to be a worthy son of Lin Zun. Walking past the disciples in the courtyard and pondering the need to keep practicing, the young man did not hear his name being called. Using the scientific and technological advancements of the previous world, the hero could create weapons that were unheard of here, but it was still not his own strength, but the strength of a weapon. Deep in thought about the importance of practicing hard when he was young, he didn't notice that someone was calling his name. It was a classmate, Hua Yi, who finally caught up with the pensive boy calling his name. After saying hello, the boy embarrassedly apologized that he didn't hear her insistent call because he was pensive. The girl said that she had overheard a conversation yesterday about the importance of the young boy, for it was thanks to him that the teacher, Gao, who was scaring everyone, was in trouble. After expressing her delight with her confused speech, she took out a neatly folded letter addressed to the boy. His frightened expression gave away the idea that it was a love letter. Hua Yi, slightly shy and blushing, held out the envelope with trembling hands and quietly asked him to take it. After fulfilling the request, the girl calmly went about her business. Watching the departing classmate, the guy closed his eyes with pleasure, realizing how many beauties in his group. The teacher interrupted the young man's dreamy mood, reminding him about the class and suggesting that the letter could wait until recess. The teacher also mentioned that it wasn't necessarily a love message, but could be a challenge to a duel, and the boy, realizing the logicality, decided to take a look. Xijin knocked on the door of the infirmary and it was opened by the friendly Hua Yi, who invited him in. This was the doctor's office where the girl worked and spent a lot of time sensing the abilities of the healing techniques. She pointed her hand forward, politely asking him to pass through and not to be shy. In the room lay Lin Bo, who had been forbidden by the doctor to get up due to a concussion, so she motioned for Xijin to sit down next to her. The young man nodded understandingly, but curiously inquired about the purpose of the unexpected call to the nurse's station. Lingbo noted Xijin's skill and offered him a suitable sword from her home collection, noting his lack of personal weapons. That weapon turned out to be a brownish-yellow demonic oblivion sword. A demonic sword of oblivion? Xijin questioned in surprise. Linbo explained that despite the name, the sword did not begin to control the wielder, causing him to kill people. The hero was perplexed as to why it was so named, assuming that no one in this world was capable of understanding and using this weapon. The girl said she didn't know how to explain it more properly, but felt that he would be able to use the sword. She thought so because yesterday the young man borrowed her sword and fought with teacher Gao to save her. Lingbo realized that despite her excitement, Xijin was willing to sacrifice his life, completely abstracted from what was happening during the deadly battle. Frightened by what she said, she asked not to be angry after all. These were just her thoughts. Saijin calmed the girl down, saying that he understood her reasoning and asked if that was why she thought the demon sword was suitable for him. The girl replied that they would know for sure if it was suitable when he saw the weapon, and invited him to come to her house tomorrow afternoon. After waiting for the guy to leave, Hua Yi wondered if it was scary to give a gift from her father to him, but Ling Bo assured her that Xie Jin would be able to find an approach to the sword. The doctor started to say that their meeting was fated, but the sick woman, not meaning it, shouted for her not to talk nonsense. Walking home, Jin pondered that the demonic oblivion sword sounded cool, and if he became one, he would be able to fight at full strength. "Wow, how awesome!" the young man exclaimed enthusiastically, anticipating receiving the legendary weapon. The next day, without wasting any time, the boy was already under Linbo's house. It was definitely her house, because a girl came out of the door and greeted the guest. Seijin greeted Linbo warmly, genuinely interested in her well-being after the recent events. The girl thanked Seijin for her help, while Huayi jokingly resented the hint of her friend's overprotective behavior. As they came closer and saw the doctor, Seijin was surprised by her presence, while Huayi noted that the hero had already saved the girl despite their brief acquaintance. The doctor joked about the possible consequences of the young people's seclusion, causing Linbo's embarrassment and the awkwardness of the situation. She abruptly covered the mouth of her doctor friend standing next to her with her hand in an attempt to stop the jokes, while Seijin watched their warm but amusing relationship with a smile. Walking into the house, the young man noticed the small number of students and wondered if it was vacation time. Linbo briefly told the story of her family and the decline of the dojo after the illness of her father, an outstanding swordsman. Right now, her father was too weak and only needed peace and rest, so the dojo had fallen into disrepair and there were only 4 students in the courtyard. Approaching one of the rooms, Linbo opened the doors and said that the Devil Oblivion sword was stored there. The first time he saw it, the young man thought it was a katana, but then he realized that it was a 2-handed longsword called a miaodao. Seijin wondered what would happen if he just picked up the sword, so he reached out his hand. As he took the weapon with his hand, he heard the phrase, "What we need we don't know, and what we know is unnecessary for us." The boy couldn't tell if the sword was talking or if he was just hearing it in his head. Then he gripped the weapon even tighter and wondered which iPhone was already out. He heard the voice in his head again. "First you quote Faust and now you're asking about the iPhone?" Finally raising the sword with his hand, the young man heard, "Damn it, I finally met someone who understands me. Let's chat, I'm dying of boredom." A look of fear appeared on the guy's face, and he thought that this wasn't cool at all. The girls watched the guy talking to the sword, and one of them said that the setting wasn't that mysterious and he would be fine. The young man was holding a weapon that kept asking him questions about his background, expenses, annual salary, and availability of winter and summer vacations. Unable to stand it, he shouted that he'd had enough. They weren't right for each other, and put the sword back down. Blade asked for just one question and asked if the guy was planning to gather a harem, because then he was definitely with him. Seijin turned around to the girls standing by the exit and said that despite being hospitable, he was not good at wielding this weapon. Even after walking out the door, the hero continued to hear everything the sword was saying and wondered if it had Bluetooth. The farther Seijin moved away from the sword, the fainter and more intermittent the mysterious signal became, gradually quieting down in his head. The Sheng Manshusha curiously asked Linbo where and under what circumstances her father had acquired this unusual sword. Linbo replied that she didn't know exactly. It was her father's second sword, which he used very little but could defeat almost anyone. The conversation was interrupted by someone's voice asking if she was bragging and suggesting that her father go for a walk if he was so cool. Turning around, they were bewildered to see 3 guys, the main one saying he'd heard about the glory of their dojo and had come to challenge them. The girl, realizing that she wasn't ready for the trouble that was coming, asked Seijin to leave, saying that she would deal with it herself. Linbo explained that in the past, masters came to their dojo to exchange experiences, but now only weaklings like these 3, pointing to the attackers. One of the guys confirmed Seijin's guess about the Gao family's revenge, saying that they had come to deal with the girl who had crossed their path. Linbo said that as a member of the family, she accepted the challenge and started to draw her sword. But Seijin stopped her, suggesting that these weak henchmen had come to ferret out their abilities and offered to help deal with the scum, as the girl was not yet fully recovered. The brigands started shouting that he was talking nonsense and would now learn the power of their swords, asking him to show what he himself was capable of, after which the 3 of them swarmed at him. Setting up, the hero drew his sword and, using the streaming wound technique his father had taught him, scattered everyone. Watching the incredible power of this technique, the girls opened their mouths. Approaching the opponents lying on the floor, the young man asked what was wrong with them. So weak. Linbo looked at Seijin with respect, realizing his strength after all. He had easily defeated 3 opponents of the 3rd rank, surpassing ordinary humans. The guy reflected that in this world, ordinary people were outnumbered, while in his previous world, they would be considered artificial warriors, and there they would have defeated him. Still sitting by his defeated opponents, Xiejin slapped one, telling him to wake up and stay awake. Grabbing the clothes of the awake opponent, Xiejin found out that they were hired by the Gao family, but they don't know the specific customer, hearing only pleas for mercy. Some warrior standing nearby said that this time they had really hit a nerve with the Gao family, and now this old dojo was unlikely to survive for long. Ling Bo shouted, "Lu Xiao!" calling him a traitor and asking how dare he come here. The man replied in a friendly manner, why would she do that since he was her father's disciple, and came back to see how they were doing since the dojo might close down. Lu Xiao cynically offered to shelter Lin Bo and her father if the dojo closed, putting the old man in a barn and making the girl his concubine maid. The former student of the dojo noted annoyingly that this guy must be a new student, since he was fighting at the drop of a hat when he saw Xiejin running at him with a sword. Lu Xiao, confident in his superiority, easily broke the sword of the attacking Xiejin and now stood there, pointing the tip of his weapon directly at the face of his disarmed opponent. The young man had many ideas on how to overpower his opponent, but there were a few things he needed to do first. He demanded compensation for his broken sword before continuing and tried to push back his opponent's blade with the remnants of his weapon. Xiejin was upset about the second broken sword, but took comfort in the fact that Lin's sword was intact, believing that only one of his blades had been broken so far. Lu Xiao laughed, noting that only this decaying dojo had such an interesting guy. Continuing to laugh, he hid his sword and introduced himself as the oldest of the dojo's fellow students who had long rebelled against his mentor. Xiejin proudly introduced himself as a student of the prestigious Royal Academy, hoping to impress. Lu Xiao warned that by going against the Gao family, Ling Bo would get no help, and to keep the dojo, must participate in next week's tournament and win it. The girl angrily inquired if he had come just for that statement. The opponent replied that he originally wanted to end the place, but now he sees that it's not all that hopeless and advised her to ask her boyfriend to participate in the tournament instead. Xiejin and Ling Bo blushed, barely being able to pronounce the words, while Hua Yi laughed at the word boyfriend and called the gentleman straightforward. Still blushing, the girl apologized for her friend's inconvenience, and the latter apologized for the broken sword. She said that the sword, though not bad, was inexpensive, and it had served her well, so she wasn't sorry it was broken. The young man asked what kind of sword this Lu Xiao had and why it was so sharp. Ling Bo narrated about her father's first sword, cicada singing, that left the dojo unprotected except for the Devil Oblivion sword, and the young man wondered about the possibility of mastering that weapon again. The girl didn't want to involve her friend in all of this again, for she was already grateful for his willingness to help. She had long been prepared for something like this, and if he was able to control the sword, she would ask the favor of overpowering Lu Xiao to help her out once more. Upon reflection, Lin Bo said that it was very selfish and asked her friends not to see her off. After all, they would see her tomorrow at school. Looking away from her friend, the boy was called by one of the bandits, who asked if he could go now, if there were no more questions for them. The young man almost forgot about the brats and returned to them, asking if the Gao family would continue to send people like them to bother Lin Bo. The hero mentally made a plan for revenge, deciding to teach the offenders a lesson by tying them naked to a pole to intimidate others. Leaving the punished offenders, the friends continued on their way, and Hua Yi wanted to make a request, but the young man beat her to it, deciding to help despite Ling Bo's warnings. Struck by the boy's kindness, Hua Yi confessed her budding feelings, but he turned the conversation by asking about Mr. Lin. Hua Yi told of Lin Le's reclusiveness, and the young man, mentioning the rumors of his injury and loss of strength, asked to narrate the details of the story. Surprised by her interlocutor's ignorance, the girl with wide-open eyes began the tale of the great battle between humans and foul beasts, culminating in a decisive battle. Headland heroically defeated a squad of wolves and their commander, sent for a surprise attack, but the price of victory was heavy wounds, depriving him of the ability to wield a sword. The young man explained that since he had been injured during the battle, he should be treated as a hero with due respect, and asked why this was not the case. The young man, after listening to the story of the aristocrats' injustice, attributed the terrible character of Gao Chen and Gao Qijin to their family's heredity. Hua Yi, chuckling slightly, inquired curiously about the future plans of her determined interlocutor. Jijin firmly stated his intention to wipe the Gao family into powder, leaving no trace of their influence behind. One of the teachers was angry, realizing that Lin Bo was preparing for the palace tournament, but Si Jin was not attending his classes, causing him to crush the pencil in his hand. Seeing this, Lin Yun turned to Hua Yi sitting nearby, asking if their friend had gone to see Lin Bo. The girl only smiled enigmatically and replied that she did not know the whereabouts of her comrade. Yun marveled at his friend's unusual nature of doing whatever he wanted and getting into trouble, and Mu Jilan turned away resentfully, saying, Meanwhile, the protagonist was already standing by the sword, preparing to try to own it again. He didn't know what others felt when touching this demonic sword, but he didn't feel anything bad himself. Taking the sword, the boy felt nothing unusual, shocking the girl, who explained that usually touching the blade caused strange thoughts and could take away one's sanity. Carefully studying the sword, the young man was perplexed as to why it remained silent. After thinking about it, he remembered the tournament and asked Lin Bo to tell him about it, a competition between the best warriors, which had not been held for many years. The girl talked about the two equal schools, martial arts and spiritual practices, noting that warriors develop physical strength and mages develop spiritual strength, achieving different effects. But now it seems that absolutely everyone is a mage. Although there are sections in the academy that study martial techniques as something auxiliary, the young man reflected. The girl confirmed that originally there were schools of martial arts and spiritual practices, but one day one person changed that once and for all. The study of spiritual practices became more accessible, allowing anyone to become a mage, while martial arts is only practiced by the gifted. Even though their dojo is very good and shows excellent results during the tournament, it has still fallen into disrepair. The young man asked curiously about the man who had changed his attitude towards spiritual practices, to which the girl was perplexed and wondered where he had come from, not knowing such elementary things. The guy tilted his head in shame, thinking that his irresponsible parents should be blamed for this. The friend spoke enthusiastically about the first teacher of spiritual practices, the founder of their school, who shared the practices and became the genius of the millennium. The boy was distracted by the sword speaking, stating their shared origins from another world. The blade quoted his famous saying, "I am very lonely," hinting at a deep philosophical meaning that Xie Jin might not have realized. Hearing this, the youngster began to roar, suggesting that the sword was from the generation of the eternally sad. Lin Bo was startled by the boy's strange behavior, but he calmed her down, telling her that everything was fine. After calming down, the young man inquired about the reason for the sword's sudden talkativeness, who admitted that he wanted to keep quiet out of resentment, but couldn't help himself. The sword advised Xi Jin to meet with Ling Lei, and the young man immediately expressed his desire to see the girl's father. Lin Bo smilingly took Xi Jin to her father, noting the necessity of this meeting for the Devil Sword's inheritance. Ling Lei didn't mind seeing the boy and allowed him to go in alone. After entering the room and closing the door, the young man apologized for the disturbance, not yet knowing what lay ahead of him. Preparing for a serious conversation, the lad introduced himself as a classmate of the man's daughter. Ling Lei's unexpected attack took Xi Jin by surprise, making him wonder how he was able to strike without a sword. The man sitting in front explained that he simply combined his thoughts and some ice cold, obtaining a substance as sharp as a sword blade. The young man almost died of fear, and the man noted that a normal person wouldn't have even felt the strike coming, but he not only felt it, but also had time to react. Ling Lei added that this time, his naive little girl had found a worthwhile man, and very seriously asked Xi Jin if he wanted to marry her. The lad asked fearfully why so immediately, and if the gentleman didn't like the fact that Lin Bo had arranged their meeting. Ling Lei jokingly suggested that the guy didn't like his daughter and advised him to think about the future, hinting at Lin Bo's potential beauty. Xi Jin really didn't like this kind of behavior from his father, and defending his friend, said that she would decide who she wanted to marry. Ling Lei, chuckling, realized that his daughter and probably other girls in the school were attracted to Xi Jin's character, reminiscent of himself in his youth, while the young man felt uncomfortable with the old man's strange behavior. The girl's father offered to become Xie Jin's godfather to give him the sword to defeat Lu Xiao, since he didn't want to marry his daughter. Xi Jin objected, citing his spiritual deity father and 10 years of swordsmanship training, doubting the usefulness of a few days of lessons from Ling Lei. When the frustrated young man was about to leave, Ling Lei intrigued him with the Devil Moon Ice Stream technique and other powerful dojo techniques applicable to the unique sword. The boy rushed to his knees to bow to his new godfather, for his real father had not taught him any techniques. The young man was worried whether he would be able to master a technique in the week before the tournament, and whether it would help him in a fight with his opponent. Ling Lei noted the lad's giftedness and the possibility of success with intensive training, and then asked the swordmaster about the possibility of extending the time within a week. Zijin put his hand on the blade, who replied that he didn't know yet himself because he needed to assess the guy's spiritual strength, but tentatively 1 year. Then the sword said, "Follow me," and said, "Bola below me," from which the hero began to shout fearfully, asking what kind of spell it was. Suddenly finding himself in an unfamiliar place, Zijin learned from the sword that his soul had been transported to a subconscious dream world where a year could pass in a second of real time with a strong spirit. The hero enthusiastically remarked that it was just like the movie Inception, and that was what the sword meant. Ling Lei walked through this city, marveling that is it really true that there were people who had crossed over to their world from this one? Zijin asked Mr. Lin in surprise how he ended up in this strange dream world. The latter replied that it was a convenient sword ability, and not only would they have enough time here, but he would also be able to take the young man to the limit of his abilities. Ling Lei explained that he couldn't hold a sword in reality, but it was different in the dream world, and added that the Devil Moon Ice Stream technique required a strong body, unsuitable for the fragile Ling bow. As he began his training, Mr. Lin mentioned the effectiveness of individual lessons and mentioned revival in the event of death, which greatly frightened the young man. While thinking about this phrase, he was distracted and didn't notice the attack coming from behind. The hero shouted to the sword, asking if since he could create such a place, he could not bring some systematicness to the practice of swordsmanship. Linla sternly reminded that this was not a game, and the sword apologized for the lack of a regular exercise system, asking to respect established customs. An anxious Linbo was approached by Hua Yi and inquired about Xie Jin. The girls looked at the door of the room, hoping that the guy who had been there for the 3rd day would now come out of there alive and unharmed. But they did not know that there was no one in the room, for they were in another world where the young man was all wounded and very tired. A whole and unharmed Lin Lei, as if he was omnipotent, said that maybe he should stop chilling and resting, pointing at the guy. Coughing, the guy started begging the sword to help him, at least a little, and heal his wounds. It worked, and in the same hour, everything healed, and he stood up fully recovered, realizing that his father had been doing him favors in training, or else he would have died tens of thousands of times already. Standing up as if he had gained strength, the young man put his sword against his opponent, offering to fight again, because this time he would definitely defeat him. Mr. Lin was amazed that the young man, having died so many times, still had not lost his fighting spirit, because despite the unreality of what was happening, the feeling of death here was realistic. Anyone would have felt fear and tried to avoid it. But the enemy pondered whether it was possible to keep a cold heart and sober mind at his age, and more importantly, not be afraid of death. Deciding that it was time for a change of strategy, Ling Lei used the final form of the Devil Moon Ice Stream technique. The guy watched with eyes huge with surprise, puzzled as to whether it was still only a swordsmanship. The man said that since Jiejin already knew the technique, he offered to try to reflect the final form. Taking the sword, the young man began to try to counter the blows flying at him. This technique forces the body to reach the speed limit so that it does not affect the sword in any way, and the person becomes one with it. Throughout his life, Linbo's father had honed this technique, gathering the power of the moon and stars. Directing a new attack at the hero, he asked what exactly Zijin wished for with all his heart. The guy realized that he wouldn't be able to repel it in time and would die after being scared, because it was really scary. He realized that he was afraid of death and never felt that his life meant anything in this world. The young man sank into the memories of his childhood, realizing how insignificant and useless his existence had been. The images of his parents had been erased from his memory in the years since they had abandoned him to his fate. So it didn't matter if he lived or not, and no one would be sad if he died, disappearing from this world. But now he is not the same, because in the other world he is surrounded by good people, his friends. And so his meaning of life, fate, and goals he will determine himself. With just such a message, he rushed into battle to repel the attack. The fight ended and the opponents separated, recovering their breath. Mr. Lin looked at the young man with delight, because he really did it, and fell to the ground without strength. Waking up, the guy heard from the sword that he had been unconscious for a very long time, and Lin Lei had long gone. The hero looked around in surprise, noting the unusual details of the surroundings. Shijin asked the sword about the nature of this world, and the blade told him that everything was created from the young man's memories, including details long forgotten. As he was about to leave, the boy decided to look at one more place beforehand. He froze at the door, remembering that in that world his mother had married for the second time, but could not resurrect her image. Overwhelmed by the desire to see his mother, he resolutely opened the door, preparing to step into the past. What was his surprise when, stepping forward, he found himself in his old home. The young man saw little himself and his mother playing with him, very cheerful and happy. He was not long able to look at this picture, and as soon as the woman raised her head to see who had come in, the door immediately closed and she saw no one. Scared by what he saw, Zijin ran out into the familiar world, where Blade explained that it was his strong memories that allowed him to enter that world. Blade said after leaving the guy that he did not think that he loved his mother so much, and he would cry with emotion. Leaving the room a few days later, the young man was surprised to find his friends, all this time waiting for his return. A few days later, the arena for the tournament was ready. Lin Yun and Mujilan discussed the upcoming tournament, noting the large number of strong participants who had gathered for the first time in 10 years. Now the differences between schools were blurring, so tournaments like this were a good opportunity to show what martial arts could do, and there were many students from their academy. The friends talked about the complicated system of selection and high competition, where luck plays not the least role in determining the winner. Talking among themselves, the friends suddenly noticed that it was their comrade Zijin's turn. The training had been very intense, and the guy had slept for several days afterward, but he had not recovered his strength, so he was constantly yawning. One of the upperclassmen noticed the yawning and tired Zijin and curiously asked if he was the famous freshman hero. Mujilan started asking a bunch of questions to Lin Yun, whether he was familiar with Xie first high school student opponent, what he was like, and whether he was strong. The guy honestly answered that there might be a problem with this competitor because he was around rank 5 right now, and even if their friend could win, he would spend too much strength. The senior mockingly noted Zijin's calmness, considering him an arrogant upstart, and began to prepare to attack, confident in his superiority. The opponent declared the unfairness of life and his intention to put the junior in his place, rushing to attack the stepping stone on his way to victory. Wuchen nonchalantly stopped the sword blade with 2 fingers, advising his opponent not to hold back due to the age difference. The stunned senior couldn't believe what was happening, suspecting some sort of deception or illusion. The high school student screamed in panic, fearing for the safety of his precious sword in the hands of the young man. The boy let go of the weapon with a slight movement, and the blade bounced smoothly towards his stunned opponent. The opponent, trying to save face, retreated, making excuses of inattention and condescension to the junior, not expecting such force. The overconfident senior shouted no more indulgences and rushed forward again. Shijin once again grabbed his sword with 2 fingers, not allowing himself to be injured. The opponent was almost crying, begging him not to do this. After all, he still wanted to sword fight. The young man continued to hold the blade, and sparks of thoughtfulness appeared in his eyes. The senior fell to his knees, dropped the sword beside him, and realized that the only thing left to do was to give up, because he definitely wouldn't win. Watching this, Lin Yun assumed that the guy would have a psychological trauma, and the princess wondered if their friend had always been so strong. Smiling, Hua Yi revealed that last time, Xijin had tied the warriors who were causing trouble for the Lin family to the pillars in the center of the city. Due to the large number of tournament participants, Gao Chen was among them, displeased with the Lin family's presence and determined to prevent them from winning at all costs. Lu Xiao reminded Gao of the possible attention to the Lin family if they performed well, but he brushed it off, stating his plans to prevent their success. The conversation was interrupted by a clerk bringing the bad news that Xie Jin had just defeated his opponent. Gao, changed in face but understanding of Jin's abilities, yelled at the assistant for reporting trivia, knowing that he would not lose in his first fight. Lu Xiao stopped the departing clerk and asked what sword the young man had used in the first battle. Gao didn't understand his friend's interest after all. Xie Jin was fighting the best high school student of their school, who was also their guard. Mr. Lu Xiao more seriously and intimidatingly asked about the sword again. Shen, unable to bear it, grabbed the servant by his clothes, shouting for him to answer the question clearly. But the answer he heard took him by surprise. Zijin stopped his opponent's attack with 2 fingers, and he immediately admitted defeat. Looking at the arena through the window, Lu Xiao realized the curiosity of this little guy and the urgency to put him in his place. After the battle, Zijin, passing by, noticed his friends and at their invitation joined them. Impressed by their victory over the 4th-ranked senior, the friends learned from the hero about the specifics of martial arts without the use of spiritual techniques. Mushilan cried out again, wondering how they had managed to defeat an opponent she considered very strong. Lin Yun admiringly called Zijin a chosen one, lamenting his unremarkable life. Linbo announced the end of the day's competition and Lu Xiao's appearance only at the official competition, bidding farewell to her friends before returning to the dojo. Lin Yun hurried home as well, citing urgent family matters. Left alone with the princess, Zijin said that even though it had been a little while, he felt as if they hadn't walked together in a long time. The girl seriously rebuked Zijin for his constant troubles, but immediately faltered when she remembered her challenge to a duel before the school year even started. The young man also stopped, slightly embarrassed, and asked if he was really making the princess worry about him. Mu Dalan insisted to Zijin not to lose, and he nodded confidently and assured her of his success, after which they continued on their way. Watching Zijin's performance in the tournament, his friends silently admired his perseverance, knowing the upcoming training tomorrow that made him so successful in the competition. The commander-in-chief of the Gao family's city guard, Gao Yuan, thought it was unacceptable for Her Majesty's personal presence at the tournament. The princess asked with mild bewilderment if the tournament would be meaningless without her presence at it. To Gao Yuan, the princess's safety was paramount, even more important than the tournament itself. Her Majesty reminded the commander-in-chief of his family's responsibility for her safety, asking if he wanted to keep her locked up at court out of some hidden agenda. He bowed respectfully, assuring her that all necessary security measures were in place for the tournament. The princess imperiously ordered him to go, and he obeyed her will without question. She said that she had heard about the participation of Zi's son from the Linshanliu dojo, and she was curious to see him with her own eyes, wondering if he was handsome. An enraged Gao Chun slammed his fist on the table upon learning that Her Majesty would personally attend the tournament. Lu Xiao speculated the reason for his friend's behavior, but the latter reminded him of the importance of his family patronage for Lu's safety. As he left, Gao said that if Lu Xiao were to oppose that guy at the tournament, he wanted him destroyed. Left alone, Mr. Lu noticed the beautiful day and the scenic spot, making his heart beat more frequently. In the evening after practice, one of the tournament participants, while returning home, noticed a suspicious following. It turned out to be an assassin sent by a mysterious gentleman to eliminate the participant. The lad unwound his spear, wondering who sent the assassin and if he was really thinking of preventing him from participating in an official competition. As he attacked, the stranger pondered the difficulty of sword versus spear combat, especially in a poorly chosen narrow alley with no chance to repel his attack. He lunged at the assassin with a divine spear of piercing strike. After quickly killing his victim, the assassin checked the list, noting that there were 13 more people left to eliminate, and hurried onward under the light of the bright moon. Early in the morning, Lin Yun rushed to Jiejin with the terrible news. Of the 16 participants in the tournament, except for him and Lu Xiao, the other 14 had been killed last night. The second day of the competition began at the Linshanliu dojo, where Mu Jilun, Ling Bo, and Hua Yi had already gathered. They were soon joined by a frightened young man, trying to find out immediately what had happened. To his question, he unexpectedly heard an answer from the princess's father, who said that it must have been the work of Lu who was interested in the boy. When asked about the reasons for this opinion, the answer followed, characterizing Lu Xiao as having outstanding abilities but an extremely impatient nature. Eager to fight the hero as soon as possible, Lu Xiao eliminated the other competitors, ensuring that the final would be just for the two of them, which made Zijin wonder if the tournament would be canceled because of such actions. It was explained to him that Lu Xiao, having killed 14 people overnight, had secured a one-on-one fight with the devil sword wielder, perhaps by practicing before the encounter. The princess inquired about Lu Xiao's personality and his swordsmanship. Lin described him as an obsessive swordsman who traveled the world and challenged masters after the rebellion against Lin Shenliu. This was how Lu Xiao studied martial techniques, perfecting the art of the sword to perfection. Mr. Lin recommended that the lad should not treat his opponent as an ordinary swordsman in the upcoming fight. The young man inquired about the devil blade he had just mentioned, Gao Yun explained that it was the third sword technique inherited by the magical general and turned to Xiao Lei how much trouble he was causing. The protagonist was extremely surprised to learn that the interlocutor also had the surname Gao. Lin Yun explained that it was Lord Gao Yuan, as the Gao family was now leading and commanding the defense of the royal capital. Gao Yin assured Zijin that his son would ensure his safety within the school walls. Hero said that Lu Xiao's long-standing conflict with Lin Shenlu and the Gao family does not concern them if they do not interfere in it. Gao Yin said that there was no proof of Lu Xiao's guilt, and as the protector of the capital, he should stop the jousting and check on both of them. However, respecting the emperor's will, he called for a dignified wait for the jousting to begin. Mr. Lin advised not to dwell on thoughts of the opponent, for if he wins, all questions can be asked in person. He added that in times of peace, such talents cannot be exposed to the dangers left behind, and Jie Jin promised to try his best. Gao Yan leaving said that he would send soldiers for safety and ordered Xi Jin to stay here and wait for orders, while the rest of them went back. The friends, not wishing to argue, decided to go away, and lastly asked Jie Jin to be careful. In the evening, lying down and getting ready for bed, the young man heard the sword's warning of someone's footsteps. He was alert and noticed an unknown figure slipping silently through the window into his room. The young man immediately asked who it was, but the stranger, not calculating, landed badly and fell to the floor and started screaming in pain. The stranger rebuked the awake Zijin for trying to scare him, to which the latter objected, pointing out the inappropriateness of a nighttime intrusion. The stranger approached, clarifying the identity of Zijin, who confirmed the statement and in response demanded to identify himself. After dropping the hood, a beautiful girl with unusual pink hair appeared in front of the young man and introduced herself as Helian Lingling. When asked by the young man about the purpose of the visit and the method of entry, the girl boastfully replied that even the spirits wouldn't have noticed her, but Xia Jin ironically pointed out her clumsy appearance. The stranger pointed out that everyone in the tournament had been killed, and now she was the only one who had come to see him, and he was expressing such equanimity that it wasn't even funny. The young man confidently declared his guest's innocence, which caused her to ask more questions. Linlin challengingly asked how Zijin was sure of her innocence and Lu Xiao's guilt. Zijin firmly declared his intention to catch the real culprit, whoever he was. The admiring girl called Zijin a worthy son of Xie Yi, unable to hold back, and snuggled up to him in a burst of affection. Surprised by the knowledge of his father, Zijin once again demanded an explanation from the stranger. Linlin was surprised that he still didn't know who she was. After all, she had fully named herself, and remarked that Xie Yi had deservedly trained him. Looking at the guy with loving eyes and getting as close as possible, she took his head as if preparing to kiss him. But after looking at him, she realized that he was both Zijin and not Zijin at the same time. Leaning her forehead against Zijin's, the girl inquired about the purpose of his arrival, hinting at his origin from another world, which surprised the hero. Hearing the question of what they were doing and the warning that if anything happened, they would take responsibility, as well as the order to search every room, the girl realized it was time to leave. Trying to leave the room through the window, the girl asked for help from Xi Jin, who mockingly reminded her of her lauded agility. In helping the girl out, Xi Jin caused her to resent the supposedly inappropriate touching, even though he was merely supporting her. Quickly finding herself outside, she peeked out the window and warned that her coming should remain between them. Putting on her hood and running off into the woods, the stranger turned to the window once more, waved and told him to try his best at the competition tomorrow. The boy waved back, never realizing why she had come or what family she was from. The next day, the arena was once again filled with spectators anticipating the exciting bouts. Wei Jin stood near his friends, who recalled yesterday's conversation with Mr. Lin about not overexerting himself, to which the guy replied that he would try his best. The hero was facing the arena, carefully inspecting the noisy crowd and colorful flags, when he suddenly heard his name. Turning around, he saw Lu Xiao with a triumphant smile announcing the arrival of the long-awaited day of the duel. Behind him stood Gao Chen, barely restraining his fury at the sight of the young man. Suddenly, it was pronounced to greet Her Majesty, and everyone present bowed. It was at this moment that the lad reflected that he had never seen the ruler of this country before, and he wondered what kind of person this was. Xi Jin looked up to see the ruler sitting on the throne, surrounded by courtiers. The young man couldn't come to his senses after realizing that it was that girl from last night, but what struck him even more was that she was looking directly at him. Her Majesty put her finger to her lips, showing a sign of silence, which made a drop of sweat roll down the boy's face. He abruptly turned around to Lin Bo standing beside him and inquired about the surname of the imperial family in their country. Ling Bo, shocked by Zijin's ignorance, struggled to squeeze out that the ruling dynasty had the surname Helion and warned against violating the strict court etiquette. Realizing the danger of his ignorance, Zijin was relieved that he had not done anything reprehensible yesterday and decided to ask Lin Yun about the world after the tournament. Lord Gao Yun ordered the participants of the imperial tournament to step forward. Zijin and Lu Xiao solemnly entered the arena, taking up positions opposite each other to the enthusiastic shouts of the spectators. Lin Lin asked if it was true that the participants of the final battle were both disciples of Master Lin Le. In her opinion, Lin Shenlu's strength should be taken seriously because their family is a branch of the House of Gao and its servants should also feel glory and honor. Gao said that Lin Shenlu had raised two young geniuses, and that was lucky for his country. Her Majesty warned him that regardless of the outcome of the battle, he must never do anything about Lin Shenlu and ordered him to forget the offenses. Gao bowed respectfully, expressing his understanding and willingness to obey the Empress's order. Standing face to face, Lu Xiao ironically noted Wang Gui's unexpected approval of Xie Jin, and the latter responded by expressing incomprehension as to how his opponent had earned Chait Ming's trust and changed so much. Promising to reveal the truth only if Xie Jin won, Lu Xiao threateningly began to bare his blade, preparing for a deadly fight. The devilish sword reminded the guy that he must not be distracted and needed full concentration. The opponents exchanged resolute glances as they drew their swords, and the arena fell silent as they waited for the fierce fight to begin. In the heat of battle, Lu Xiao noted the young man's significant increase in strength, suggesting that he was trained by Ling Lei, and suggested that they call each other brothers. Xie Jin parried, reminding him of the student's ability to surpass the teacher, and advised his opponent to be careful. Lu Xiao, expressing impatience to test this assertion, swiftly swung his blade that flashed in the air. The boy, showing lightning-fast reaction, barely had time to jump back, avoiding the deadly blow. Instantly gathering himself, Zijin released Lin Shenlu's latent energy, preparing for a counterattack. The fight continued. The opponents added speed and barely had time to fend off each other's blows. The princess watching the battle noticed that they were very strong and powerful. Unlike a magic duel, they don't use any special techniques. There is no wall of fire, typhoon, or hurricane, but the arena is very tense. Lin Bo noted that they exclusively used martial arts. Constantly, someone was attacking and the other was fighting back. Life and death, victory and defeat were at the tip of the blade. One powerful strike and both opponents, thrown back by the force of the collision, scattered to different ends of the arena. Barely able to stand on his feet, the hero realized that his opponent was the strongest he had encountered, as intimidating as Spirit King Gao Qi. He is even as strong as Ling Lei's predecessor and father combined. Lu Xiao, smiling admiringly, recognized his opponent's strength, noting that he hadn't enjoyed a duel like this in a long time. Xie Jin, trying to hide the trembling in his voice, honestly admitted his fear of his formidable opponent. Lu Xiao suddenly softened, offered to keep the young man alive in exchange for admitting defeat, considering it a more interesting outcome. But the hero replied that if he admitted defeat now, he must not dare to defeat him later. Lu Xiao, accepting the challenge, prepared to use his legendary cicada ghost sword technique. The sword tried to warn its owner that the cicada blade was as sharp as its wings, and not only cut iron like clay, but also had other special effects. Xie Jin's opponent jumped high and began to execute a complex sequence of movements of his deadly technique. The young man was barely able to repel the attack, but the sword warned that it was not yet complete, and bleeding wounds appeared on the hero. The fight continued with increasing intensity, with Lu Xiao fiercely attacking and Xie Jin straining all his strength to repel the blows. Seeing more and more wounds on himself, he finally realized that it was the vacuum effect. Due to the high-frequency vibration when the sword swung on its trajectory, a vacuum was instantly released, forming a second invisible blade. Almost covered in blood, but still fighting, the young man realized the unusual nature of the attack. The cicada's vacuum blade acts after a blow from a regular sword. He realized that if he interrupted the attacks of the cicada blade, he would not be able to stop subsequent attacks. Masters, unlike mages practicing martial arts, focus on using their physical and spiritual strength. To defeat a strong opponent, a master must train tirelessly, building up his power. If it is not possible to break through the enemy's defense, it is necessary to improve the speed of attacks. The path of an adept martial artist is a continuous striving to increase the speed of movements. The speed of light is not the limit. Their skill is the endless development and torment of the flesh. The apprentice turned to the master sitting in front of him, asking if it was easier to slow down the enemy if one couldn't get faster. The boy asked for help in creating the Eye of Cicada's sword, unsure of the end result but confident in the name. Lu Xiao fought with Zijin using exactly that sparkling in the air, the legendary Ghost Cicada sword. Gao Yun, watching Lu Xiao's lightning-fast attacks, was certain of their irresistibility. Lin commented anxiously, urging the lad not to die so senselessly in this battle. The young man's friends, tensely watching the fight, shouted out his name, warning him of the danger. Zijin, showing incredible agility, miraculously dodged the deadly blow, preserving the integrity of his spine. The opponent, intrigued by the evasion, decided to test the young man's next move by swinging his sword again. In response to the attack, Zijin swung his weapon, shouting out the name of the moonsword technique. Lu Xiao bounced back, realizing that the guy had broken through his defenses and needed to increase the distance. Only a full swing of the sword could repel the cicada's attack, so by guessing the right moment, the blade would be able to destroy his weapon. Reflecting the blows, Mr. Lu assumed that Ling Xin had transmitted the strength of the moon to the young man. He swung his sword and used the technique with a wave, smashing the stone in front and rushing towards the young man. Standing in a fighting stance, Zijin pondered the risk while his sword encouraged him, promising to repel any attack. Inspired by the power of the moon transmitted by Ling Lu, the lad was ready to rush into battle with renewed determination. In a swift dash, the young man jumped up, delivering a lightning-fast strike, so fast that the spectators did not have time to catch his movements. Lin, amazed by Lu Xiao's lack of reaction, assumed that the attack was incredibly swift and unexpected for the opponent. Her Majesty began to ponder that they, watching from the side, could see the blows, but in front of the eyes of the guy's opponent, everything was different. Using his body and sword, he stopped the attack, and with his smooth foot movements, he demonstrated the skill of anticipating his opponent's steps. Lu Xiao knew that Zijin's inaction was deceptive, and after such a move, having accumulated all his strength, the young man rushed forward with light, imperceptible, smooth, and clearly calibrated steps. The girl enthusiastically described the essence of the illusion, comparing it to the disappearance of the moon, invisibly watching from the sky, ready to applaud the mastery of the deception. Seeing the young man slash through his opponent's sword, Her Majesty realized that Zijin was indeed a consummate swordmaster, mastering the Linglei technique. His friend's first reaction was quite strange. No one could believe that he had won. But after realizing that it didn't seem like it, they began to rejoice for their friend who had defeated Lu Xiao. The defeated soldier started coughing, and through the pain, he muttered that the guy's sword was good, and only a person who had gone through many battles and training would be able to master a technique of such strength. Yijin warned the defeated opponent not to move, keeping the blade dangerously close to his heart. As if speaking of this last request, the defeated man started to say that if it was possible, he would also like to stand like this for a little while. But when he continued that once he came to his senses, his soul would already be completely consumed by the demon, his sword began to turn red. Seeing the change in the color of the blade, Her Majesty immediately knew that it was the devil's power and was frightened. She shouted for the young man to move away from the defeated enemy, and Gao Yuan ordered the Royal Defense Squad to be put on alert. The hero also saw the change, but he only managed to utter this with frightened eyes. The dying opponent with red pupils let out a chilling scream filled with demonic energy. Around the sword, the ghost of a crying demon hovered ominously, filling the air with a gloomy aura. The sword explained to the frightened and uncomprehending guy that apparently the cicada sword had been infected, and it was clearly done by the third demon killed by Lin Li, that is, the weeping demon. The royal guards, realizing the danger, rushed towards Lu Xiao in an attempt to stop his transformation. But they didn't stand a chance, for they didn't even get close to him as everyone started to drop dead. Lin Yun ordered everyone to leave urgently and ordered level 4 and above military personnel to make a safe exit. The princess clearly didn't want to listen to him and had already prepared her weapon, the arrows, to attack. Lin also shouted for them not to attack the demon as they were not his opponents, trying to stop his friend standing next to him with this. But Zijin is still there, and right now their duty is to protect the ordinary people and the young man can only hope for himself. Linbo froze in confusion and fear, unable to believe what was happening before her eyes. Helion asked about the curse placed by the dying demon on the cicada sword that caused Linlo's ailment. Her Majesty was advised to take shelter in a safe place while the Lord and guards dealt with Lu Xiao. Wearing the crown, the princess accused them of negligence, leading to a dangerous situation due to personal revenge. She warned of her upcoming serious conversation with Lord Gao about what had happened. The Lord angrily accused Mr. Lu of submitting to evil, demanding that he stop resisting detention. Lu Xiao raised his head and promised to take revenge for the old man's unfair treatment. Gao Yi shouted, "Die!" and created magic and unleashed it into the air. Shi Jin couldn't believe his eyes after all. He was a level 9, and his strength was several times that of a level 7 warrior. But the demonized student was not going to give up and also unleashed a demon to help him carry out the plan. The demons simultaneously began to invade all the dead warriors, reviving them. The warriors revived by the demon with burning red eyes stood up, ready to do his bidding. Their only goal was to mercilessly destroy all those they met in their path. But before that, the resurrected soldier's skin peeled off, revealing ghastly bony figures ready for battle. The royal guards, unaffected by the demon's influence, engaged in a fierce battle with the undead, ready to defend the city to the last drop of blood. Lu Xiao's bony servants, possessing inhuman strength and invulnerability, easily defeated the living warriors. The animated corpses inexorably pursued the cornered Gao Chen, who was begging for help and desperately trying to escape. The Lord, hearing his son's cries, did not hesitate for a second and rushed to the rescue, risking his own life to save his heir. Quickly reaching Chen, he stood between him and the zombie, forming a human shield and preparing for a desperate fight. After gaining an uneasy victory over the dead, the exhausted father sternly ordered his son to immediately leave the dangerous place. Demonic Lu Xiao wryly remarked that the powerful lord had only condescended to save the pathetic offspring, disregarding the deaths of the others, and contemptuously called their family insignificant. Suddenly, the demon heard a desperate cry demanding not to hurt someone's friends, breaking the eerie silence. To Lu Xiao's genuine surprise, what stood in front of him was not the opponent who had escaped, but a bravely returned opponent, ready to continue the fight. Lu Xiao said that apparently the young man was very moral since he wanted to protect his friends, but don't let him worry, he wouldn't kill them since they had already reached a safe place. The guy asked a logical question as to why the demon was doing this, not realizing whether the person in front of him was a good person or a soulless demon. Lu Xiao philosophically replied that being good was his longtime dream, while being a demon was an inevitable fate he had resigned himself to. He didn't know for sure if the ancient sword curse was making itself felt, or if the powerful warriors from the past had influenced him like this. But today he, exhausted, is no longer able to understand this mysterious situation in detail. The hero, trying to understand Lu Xiao's motives, cautiously asked if he knew about the curse when he decided to steal the sword. The demon replied that old man Ling Lei was too kind, and the cursed sword was better suited for him, giving vent to his dark thoughts. To the young man's question about the propriety of killing so many people, Lu Xiao parried, suggesting that the hero should be the last person he would kill. The hero confidently shouted his intention to stop Lu Xiao, preparing for the decisive battle to save the city. The demon mockingly offered a look at the young man's capabilities, using devastating magic that crushed the arena floor. The young man was distracted by the destruction for a moment, but noticed Lu Xiao's swift attack just in time. Stopping dangerously close, the demon swung his bloody red blade, preparing to deliver a deadly blow. The hero decided to use the final form of the devil, Moon Ice Stream, remembering the critical moment of the battle with Ling Lei. Realizing the impossibility of repelling the blow, he strove to survive using all the skills he had acquired during his training. The young man concentrated on finding the one precise strike that could hit his opponent. After all, one precise and skillfully calibrated blow is superior to 100 useless lunges. Luck smiled on the hero. Watching the approaching enemy, he suddenly noticed the vulnerable place of the demon, hidden from other eyes. Without wasting a second, he struck a lightning-fast and precise blow at the demon's weakness. The bleeding Lu Xiao couldn't understand how this happened, although he realized that invincible swords didn't exist. But he was perplexed as to how this young man had found his weapon's weakness so quickly. The demon thought that the kid was smart beyond his years, and the disciple had truly surpassed the teacher. These were Lu Xiao's last words before he fell dead to the ground. Hearing the sound of falling, the hero turned around and was relieved that the opponent would not get up again. With the death of the main demon, his minions had clearly lost most of their strength. The incoming general couldn't believe that the guy in front of him had handled such evil. He looked at the young man so viciously that he could feel his anger, and hoped that under the hype, the general would not kill him, because only his men were left nearby. After a few seconds, the commander said that today the guy can be proud of himself, and he realizes that some of his family members are not the best people on the planet. The incident that happened would hit Gao's family very hard, and the young man might think that he had repaid them in this way. While saying this, they looked at the corpse of the lying demon. But what was their stunned surprise when the mask from him suddenly fell off, revealing his true face. The general and the guy were furious because it was not Lu Xiao's corpse. Crouching down beside the dead body, the warlord recognized it as one of his warriors and assumed that Mr. Lu had been using this technique to hide from the beginning. He continued to sit by the corpse and told Zijin to leave, for he had nothing more to do here. The young man bowed respectfully and, without wasting a second, began to carry out the order he had received. Leaving the place, the hero was confronted by Gao Chen, whose hostile gaze was accompanied by a sharp warning of the incompleteness of their confrontation. Zijin, holding back his irritation, reminded Gao Chen of the gravity of the situation and advised him to support his father in the family's looming problems. The arrogant young man started shouting how dare he talk to him like that, and ordered his subordinates to give the jerk a good lesson. However, Chen, not realizing the full extent of what was happening, tried in vain to command the warriors who ignored his orders. They all left, leaving a stunned and angry Gao Chen sitting alone on the floor, immersed in his gloomy thoughts. Lin Lei, immersed in his thoughts, sat in the courtyard of the dojo, leisurely smoking a pipe and enjoying the peaceful view of nature. Sensing the unexpected guest, he told him not to hide but to pass through, for he had long since been spotted. Luca hesitantly walked out from behind the pillar, and the mentor, noticing his confusion, asked about the defeat and advised him to find his own path rather than follow someone else's. The former disciple expressed admiration, noting how in a few days of training, Ling Lei was able to prepare a boy capable of defeating him. The mentor, noticing the weakening influence of the sword, wondered why Lu Xiao persisted in his chosen path. Ready to confront the whole world for his goal, he announced his intention to travel north to seek the patronage of evil spirits, envisioning their next encounter already as enemies. "Foolish child," the mentor said bitterly, continuing to smoke and contemplate nature, now clouded by heavy thoughts. After a fierce and grueling fight, the young man was jubilant. The Linla family's years-long problems had finally been resolved. After the tournament ended, a special regime was immediately imposed in the city. The royal guards carefully searched for traces of Lu Xiao, but to no avail. He had probably long gone into hiding. The empress, recognizing the brilliant victory of the young man, solemnly awarded Lin Lu the honorary title of Grand Master of Fencing. After an impressive performance, Lin Lei began to actively apply to numerous students. Although he did not seek such a loud fame, martial arts regained the former popularity, and the hero sincerely hoped that Lin Bo is very happy about this unexpected fact. The Gao family had finally lost the prestigious right to guard the imperial court because of the scandalous connection with Lu Xiao's criminal actions. Gao Cheng was incredibly lucky. Thanks to his father's influential connections, he was not imprisoned, but only placed under strict house arrest. The boy inwardly rejoiced at this just ending. So typical of the downfall of a negative character in fascinating book stories. A lot had happened recently, but unfortunately, Shijin was simply confined to his bed. For after the competition, every tendon and muscle in his body ached terribly, and he could not move. Lying there in complete inactivity, he anxiously thought about the many important exams he had missed, but he hoped that there was no concept of staying back for a second year in this world. Suddenly, the window opened with a slight creak, and the intrigued hero looked with undisguised curiosity at the mysterious guest who had suddenly appeared. The young man was genuinely surprised to see the Empress herself again on the dizzying height of the third floor of his modest room. She deftly and gracefully climbed in, laughing contagiously and playfully, calling herself the inimitable, agile Hylian Lingling. When he asked her about the reason for her unexpected visit, the angry girl called him an egregious brute and jokingly began to kick him lightly. After calming down a bit, she sternly reminded him to carefully observe the palace etiquette, knowing her true high-ranking personality. Writhing in acute pain after the playful kicks and grueling competition, the embarrassed boy began to apologize sincerely to Her Majestic Highness. The girl crouched down beside him, about to say something, but the young man saw her underwear and sweated with embarrassment. Raising his embarrassed gaze, he was surprised to learn that she had specially come to congratulate him on his brilliant victory, having decided to visit him personally, having learned about his deplorable condition. Interestedly, the lad asked if she had sneaked here again, for in the palace her guards would again raise the alarm, but in spite of the danger, she entered into the position of a subject and came. A displeased Helion said that if he talked to everyone like that, he would never gain the favor of any girl. The young man laughed, asking if it was that bad, and maybe she would give him some title to make it easier to get girls. The Empress Riley mocked the young man's naivety, saying that even with a high-profile title, he would remain a rustic in the eyes of the refined girls of the capital. She stood up with her arms crossed on her chest and added that even if she gave him a high title, no worthy girl would look in his direction. Is the situation really that hopeless? Do I really have no chance at all? The frustrated young man asked, calming down after the joking altercation. Laughing, the Empress sat down beside him again and told him not to be afraid, for if no one really needed him, she would gladly take him to her palace. Frowning, the embarrassed lad replied that he didn't want to get into the palace that way at all. Suddenly, a caring Lin Bo came silently to the door of his cozy room, knocked politely and gently warned him of her imminent entrance. Frightened by the knock, the Empress demanded shelter, but the young man, explaining the lack of suitable places, suggested she leave the same way, to which she objected, pointing out the dangerous height of the third floor. Lin Bo, radiant with joy, entered the room, and upon seeing Xi Jin sprawled out on the bed in the empty room, she affectionately said his name. "Lin Bo, is that you?" the young man asked with feigned surprise, secretly fearing the discovery of the hidden Empress. The girl apologized for the late visit, citing an abundance of business, and with an understanding nod, Saijin mentioned the rumors regarding the influx of students in their dojo. Confirming her busyness, Lin Bo noted that the situation was gradually normalizing, and her father had already started training new followers. Suddenly remembering her errand, Lin Bo reported that Hua Yi had handed over the medicines for Xie Jin and began to retrieve them from her pocket. Explaining the purpose of the medicines for pain relief, she unfolded a note from Hua Yi with instructions for use, which included advice about light massage and a hint of taking a chance. Lin Bo's face flushed with embarrassment, which did not escape the guy's gaze as he inquired about the reason for her confusion. After struggling a bit with her emotions but still feeling embarrassed, Lin Bo hesitantly asked Xi Jin to take off her clothes. The Empress, still hidden under the cramped bed, was silently seething with rage at what was happening because she was the first to arrive, and it was her underwear that the young man had seen. The young man jumped up fearfully on the bed, writhing in pain, and perplexedly asked why he had to take off his clothes. Lin Bo, noticing his discomfort, gently explained the need to apply a healing ointment to his body. The boy began to awkwardly recoil, suggesting alternatives, but the girl insisted on her decision. "It's my duty to you," Lin Bo said with slight embarrassment, but firm determination in her voice. Xi Jin obediently began to undress, exposing a muscular body covered in scars from past battles. Touching his back, the girl felt the strength of his muscles, evidence of long and hard training. Gently massaging, Lin Bo asked about the strength of the pressure, to which the guy responded, feeling relief in his muscles. The Empress, hidden under the bed, covered her face with her hands, realizing the ridiculousness of her situation. Grateful for the help, the young man took Lin Bo's hand, saying that he was already feeling much better. The girl reminded him that there were still his legs left, which also needed treatment. Fearing the detection of the Empress, the boy abruptly turned around and said that he could apply them himself, frightening the girl who opposed self-medication because of the possibility of doing it wrong. From the guy's sudden movement, the girl lost her balance and fell right on top of him, ending up on the bed with him. Hurriedly getting up, Lin Bo apologized and worriedly asked if she had hurt him. He replied that it was nothing, and then the girl asked him not to refuse her help, as it was the only thing she could do for him right now. Finding himself in an incomprehensible pose, Z realized that he urgently needed to calm down and think about something boring, like a problem about the area of a circle. At this time, Lin Bo stood up from him and asked him what he thought of her. The young man quickly began to voice that he thought she was a very smart and good girl who not only had a high level of martial arts skills, but also helped her father, who was undoubtedly very proud of her. She started to justify that she was doing all this because she had to protect their dojo and she had no talent, because if the guy hadn't saved them back then, they wouldn't exist anymore. The guy started encouraging Lin Bo, saying that perseverance will lead her to great achievements. He reminded her of her victory over Gao Chen as proof of her strength and ability. "Should I believe in myself more?" the enthusiastic girl asked hopefully. Jin advised her not just to believe, but to be proud of herself, emphasizing the advantage of their youth, adding that constant training would help her overcome any difficulties and defeat strong opponents. Lin Bo, surprised by the wisdom of his words, noticed with a smile that he spoke quite like an adult. Thanking the young man, the girl snuggled into his shoulder, seeking support and comfort. Gathering her courage, Lin Bo prepared to say something important, looking at Jin straight in the eyes. Suddenly, the door swung open, and the princess entered the room without warning, breaking the intimate moment. Seeing the half-naked Jin, she turned away, but managed to ask the reason for his inappropriate appearance. The princess sat down next to him, explaining that she had brought some notes and inquired about the young man's well-being. Lin Bo, hiding under the bed, was astonished to find another unexpected guest there. Hillian quickly interrupted Lin Bo's attempt to address her formally by covering her mouth with her hand. Realizing the complexity of the situation, a pale Jin realized that he was in an extreme predicament. Jin, the son of spiritual gods, had been reborn in this world after being killed by a truck in his previous life. His soul had gained a new body, following the destined path of becoming a great warrior. Sitting on the bed with Mujilan, the young man pondered how to get out of the situation with the two girls hiding under the bed. He thought about pretending that everything was fine and calling everyone to play mahjong, but he remembered that it wasn't in this world yet. The guy decided to tell the rules of the game, confident of its popularity, and imagined opening an establishment with drinks, girls, and mahjong, setting up a world competition. Immersed in fantasies, the young man did not notice the bewilderment of the princess sitting next to him, and then planned to teach demons to play the game so that everyone would compete, figuring out the relationship. Concerned by the boy's strange appearance and behavior, Mujilan touched him, asking if he was all right and if he had a fever, but he shouted that then there would be no wars and deaths, frightening her. The fright made the girl jump up, and the notes that were lying on her lap sprinkled. Bending over to pick up the papers, she rebuked Jin for scaring her. The guy realized that the princess would now notice the hiding girls and he would be finished. And so it happened. Leaning over, Mujilan saw them, and the young man was already mentally saying goodbye to his life. There was no point in hiding any further, and everyone began to get out of their hiding places. When asked by the princess about what was going on, Lin Bo was the first to say that she was helping the boy apply the ointment that Hua Yi had given him. Mujilan asked if he couldn't apply the ointment to his body himself, putting Lin Bo into a stupor. While in the background, the empress giggled, for that tone immediately gave away the princess. An angry Jin blamed the empress for the situation. Hillian wondered if he was really blaming her for everything that was happening. Mujilan, noticing the stranger, asked Jin who she was. Shocked by the princess's ignorance, the young man introduced the empress as Her Majesty. The startled Mujilan started to bow, but in response, she heard that they were not at an official reception, so they would dispense with courtesies, and besides, she was a princess of a neighboring kingdom. When asked about the reason for the empress's visit, Jin only shrugged his shoulders in bewilderment. About to culturally cut into the princess's conversation, the empress coughed so that everyone would shut up and pay attention to her. When that happened, she explained that Jin was special and she had an errand for him, so she hoped that everything that happened here would stay between them. A surprised Mujilan queried about the specialness, but the empress said that the young man would explain everything himself. Hellion then turned to the standing Ling, saying that she had planned to meet her father in addition to this, and asked her to escort her out. The woman bowed and said, "Of course, Your Majesty." As she left, Lin Bo handed the princess some medicine and asked her to help their mutual friend. When the empress and Ling Bo left, Mujilan returned to the young man who wanted to explain the empress's words, but she said to apply the ointment first. While giving the massage, the princess noticed the young man's good shape and rebuked him for flirting with girls. With a smirk, the protagonist asked if she was jealous of other girls. The princess reminded him of the importance of studying to achieve the rank of spiritual deity, hinting at her progress. Calmly and without straining, Jin said, "Why not, since his parents are spiritual masters?" Entering the dojo, the girl watched the training of the new disciples with interest. Linglok noted with deep reverence that the impressive influx of disciples was undoubtedly a merit of Her Majesty. The Empress had strongly expressed the need to curb the Gao family's ambition, which had recently overstepped its bounds. Mr. Lin was quick to say that he was merely a swordsman and was not versed in such political matters. "Your remarkable constancy is admirable and surprising," the shrewd empress remarked with slight irony. She commanded the training process of the elite warriors imperiously and unappealingly, ignoring the master's obvious doubts. Lin Le, with poorly concealed annoyance, inquired about the true purpose of her unexpected and persistent visit, not believing that she had simply come to look at his life. At the old fence of the dojo, Helian cautiously and as if casually inquired about Lu Xiao's mysterious northern journey. After a long tense pause, the empress asked directly and decisively about the master's unconditional loyalty to his wayward disciple. Ling Lei respectfully bowed his gray head and firmly affirmed his unwavering loyalty to his mentor's duty and principles. Linlin turned away from him with the realization that to some extent, he was right and had nothing to scold him for. Gracefully seating herself on the bench, she detailed the extensive search for a miracle medicine to cure him undertaken by Xie Yi and Ruin Di. The experienced Mr. Lin took a deep breath and confessed that he had almost resigned himself to his unenviable situation. The Empress ranted excitedly about the critical importance of his recovery in the face of the impending global catastrophe. The experienced master instantly realized that such a high person would not appear without a good reason, and the first thing that came to mind was a demon invasion. She hinted cryptically that there were creatures in the world far more dangerous and insidious than the demons they knew. Perhaps the Empress was referring to the half-crazed Gao Chen, who at this moment was violently smashing everything around him in a fit of uncontrollable rage. A counselor standing nearby urged the enraged Gao to keep his composure and dignity in the face of his subjects. Gao Chen slammed his fist on the massive table and angrily exclaimed that his shameful expulsion from the school irreparably tarnished the family honor. Suddenly, a mysterious girl appeared on the doorstep and said curtly that the wretched school was unworthy of educating such an outstanding student. Chen, still seething with anger and unwilling to communicate, abruptly turned around and rudely asked who she was and why she had appeared. The stranger, smiling enigmatically, introduced herself as Biluo, but immediately added that many people knew her as Pearl. Looking carefully at the girl, Chen could not hide his amazement when he saw an aura of rank 9 strength emanating from her. After the healing massage, Zijin felt an unprecedented surge of strength, largely due to Hua Yi's miraculous medicine. Suddenly, someone lightly touched his shoulder. Turning around, he saw the princess asking about the recent massage with a sly smile. The young man somewhat confusedly wished good morning, acutely aware of the possible tension in their relationship after the recent events. Ling Yun, playfully hitting Xiejin with a rolled-up outline, ironically inquired if he thought he was untouchable to the teachers. The boy with a disarming smile parried that every school had a special student who got away with a lot of things. With a sly grin, the teacher chagrined at the lad, assigning him to practice fighting due to sudden fatigue, assuring that the young man would be up to the task. The stunned Zijin started to ask questions, but the cunning teacher had already hurriedly departed, leaving him at a loss. The young man, sweating nervously, realized the gravity of his responsibilities while his friends, chuckling, promised to see him in class. In class, the wily teacher introduced his replacement, Xiejin, as a recently recovered but already ready for new challenges. He announced that anyone could challenge the newly minted teacher to a duel to hone his combat skills and went to rest. As he left, Teacher Gan turned to the students and added that everyone could use any weapon, even a stick, except the new teacher. The excitement of the disciples excitedly challenged the new teacher to a duel. Shijin visibly tensed up, fearing the possibility of a massive attack from his classmates. The princess curiously asked Lin Yun about his intention to participate in a massive attack on his friend, but he resolutely refused, preferring a fair one-on-one duel. Linbo noted everyone's enthusiasm, and Hua Yi attributed it to the rare opportunity to fight a strong opponent. The intrigued Lin Yun eagerly anticipated to see Xiejin's full strength, using impressive spiritual techniques. The determined young man gathered his wits and accepted the challenge, preparing for a challenging battle against the excited and eager to win students. The enthusiastic students, summoning a variety of magic, cautiously and expectantly approached their newfound teacher. The observers noted the seriousness of their rivals, but doubted their chances against an experienced friend who had practice, not just theory. The first attacking student briefly used a rather powerful third-level technique called Fireball, but he didn't even have time to use it before the faster and more agile opponent grabbed him by the elbow, with lightning speed. Due to the active magic in the guy's hand, as he twisted his elbow, the fireball rushed towards the frightened students, causing them to panic. It was definitely the right decision on their part, as the powerful flaming ball exploded very close to them. The teacher looked at his defeated opponent very seriously and sternly, and firmly said that he had completely lost in this fight. Letting him go, the confident young man began to rapidly create magic for his unconditional victory in the battle. One of the female students, who was watching all of this closely, decided to take the chance and go on a decisive offensive. She attacked with an electric discharge, arrogantly believing that the teacher wouldn't have time to react. To her amazement, he easily repelled the attack and used the water flow technique, thus creating a solid cage of bubbling water that she could not escape from on her own. Sejin continued to use a variety of first-level techniques, using the dangerous and sharp ice discs, for example. While the teacher was distracted by the trapped student, the other two used powerful level 3 techniques, but the young man had the foresight to use the ice discs, repelling the stealthy attack. Sensing the impending insidious attack in time, he deftly threw them high up and was able to blind the brazen attackers for a while. When the stunned students finally opened their eyes again, there was no one in front of them. They could not understand where their rival had disappeared so suddenly and without a trace. However, they didn't have to look for him for long, because one frightened student shouted loudly that he was already standing behind them. Before they could react to the warning, the students found their opponent behind them, who grabbed them by the shoulders and grinningly announced their total defeat. The astonished students were amazed at Sejin's unrivaled skill and made no secret of it, and his astute friends noted his brilliant tactical approach to combat. Linyan speculated that the experienced teacher had probably expected the talented young man to take a completely different approach to battle. Satisfied with his convincing victory, Sejin suddenly noticed the strange, puzzled expressions on the faces of the other students. The impressed classmates sincerely expressed their deep respect, unanimously recognizing the young man's clear superiority in strength, agility, and intelligence. A female student who had fought with the newly minted teacher and was in the cage noted the strangeness of their fight. All the students agreed with her words, and the confused young man didn't know what else to add. He assumed that it was because he didn't use high-level techniques. Linyan and Mujalan approached him, saying that from what they saw, the young man was spending a lot of time practicing techniques. The curious Huayi suddenly asked at what young age the brave Sejin first went on a dangerous monster hunt. The hero smilingly said that he thought he was around 8 years old, as if knowing that it was too early and he was special. The people around him turned pale at this information, because at 8 years old, being in the forest with monsters on your own was insane. The boy wondered if they felt sorry for him, hearing everyone talk about how hard it was for him. The poor guy. The princess shrewdly noted the significant difference in the approach to martial arts training between their countries and Sejin's methods. The astonished young man could not understand the widespread disregard of students for basic but effective low-level techniques. The student confessed that she thought water flow was a childish technique, unable to stop electric discharge, but merely designed to feel spiritual power. The young man began to explain that the current needs a good conductor, and air is not suitable for it, so he used water flow. But noticing the surprised faces of his interlocutors, who did not know the meaning of some words from his explanation, he stopped his story. After scratching his head, the hero decided that it was too complicated for them and suggested that he first tell them about the basic principles of combat. He said that higher-level techniques allowed for more damage, but required more time and effort to prepare, as spiritual techniques required combining one's spiritual power with natural ones. More advanced level 3 techniques require the concentration of more natural power than level 1 techniques and thus require more time and effort. However, those with high levels can quickly utilize even the beginning techniques. The disciple, puzzled yet understandingly, voiced his speculation that this was why Sejin was able to use his techniques so quickly. The young man explained that his level was higher, so for him the first level techniques required less time than the third level techniques for them. But he didn't use a high-level technique to defend himself from the possible attack of the remaining two. At these words, the students were greatly frightened, which was clearly visible from their pale faces and eyes widened with terror. He added that aside from quick creation, the low-level techniques had other trump cards that should not be neglected, as the most important thing was not strength, but using it at the right time, which was the basic principle of combat. Saying that each technique has its own use, He created a fire on his hand and advised to study the basis deeper before using complex techniques. After all, it was possible to make the flames grow much stronger, and he created a wind in his other hand, showing an example of what he said. But if one created a vacuum, the flame would immediately extinguish, for the elements react differently with each other. Inspired by the new knowledge, the energetic students immediately began to practice their newly learned techniques with enthusiasm. The newly minted teacher watched with delight, happy that he was able to teach his classmates something new. Teacher Gan praised the boy and said that he should become a teacher, promising to talk to the principal, causing the boy to turn pale and frightened, asking if the teacher was mocking him. While they were talking, they didn't notice that everyone had already dispersed, and the teacher said that now was the time. But the boy didn't understand the time for what. Lin Yun, who approached, decided to explain everything briefly and very clearly, suggesting, "Let's fight." The protagonist looked at his friend incredulously, as if doubting the adequacy of his words, and asked if he was not joking. His comrade replied with unwavering determination in his gaze that he was absolutely serious and would not miss such a unique opportunity to compete. Lin Yun warned that unlike the other students, he had been honing his skills since childhood, so don't expect to defeat him easily. The resourceful Jie Jin asked Gao with a pointed tone for permission to use his favorite sword in the upcoming battle. The teacher yawned and firmly rejected the young man's request, genuinely wanting to see his new, unknown techniques. The enemy said that the hero must surely be aware of his strength, the element of ice, and created sharp ice cones. The princess asked about the intricacies and peculiarities of the ice element with lively interest. She followed the battle closely, trying to unravel Zijin's mysterious element. The opponent shouted, "Take that!" and pointed the 3 sharp ice flows he had just created at the hero. The young man pondered as he created the ice disc, thinking that the cone-shaped ice of the opponent increased the damage and speed of the technique by easily overcoming air resistance. Jijin noted that it was worth it to only slightly affect the enemy ice, and it would immediately change trajectory. Lin Yun noted the unusual use of ice instead of fire to repel an attack. He was impressed by how easily Jijin was able to find the weakness of his technique. An opponent shrouded in a shimmering aura warned that fighting him would require serious mental effort. The young man looked at him in surprise, not understanding what he was going to do, but he decided not to miss the opportunity to attack. After all, he couldn't defend himself all the time. Lin Yun admitted with a sly smirk and undisguised pride that he had borrowed an interesting technique from Jejin. "What the?" the protagonist asked in surprise when a swift ice bullet suddenly flew towards him. With a powerful strike, it threw one of the fighting men backwards, causing those watching the fight to stare in amazement. Lin Yun held another bullet in his hand and looked at it admiringly, saying that it was just as Jie Jin had said, fast, easy, and effective, and offered to name the technique. Saijin, slightly embarrassed, explained that he usually called this effective technique simply ice bullets. The friend approved of the name, and after announcing the new technique, he fired a whole series of ice projectiles at the enemy. Trying to dodge, the young man was angry at the copying of the technique and amazed at the speed of mastering it, realizing Lin Yun's strength. The less agile Shi Jin, while avoiding the attack, was accidentally hit by an ice bullet that immobilized his leg. Unable to move, the guy decided to try to attack his opponent from behind, and creating magic, directed it at the back of his friend standing in front. The princess watching this was amazed, for this was her style of fighting. Lin Yun, after creating an ice defense, explained that he had studied Mujalan's style perfectly, rendering Sijin's techniques ineffective. Lin Bo, watching the exciting battle with admiration, couldn't hold back an exclamation about the guy's incredible strength. Teacher Gan noted that without the sword, Jejin's strength had diminished, but in spiritual techniques, the opponents were equal. The teacher admired Lin Yun's innovative technique, deciding to include it in future ice element textbooks. The boy dodged, pondering that fighting with Lin Yun was quite different from fighting with a princess and much more unpredictable. The ice element allowed Lin Yun to completely control the battlefield, immobilizing his opponent's leg with an ice trap. Shijin realized that cold strengthened ice but also made wind more powerful, so he created a wind defense against ice bullets. With this multifunctional technique, the young man planned to not only defend himself, but also launch powerful, crushing counterattacks. Concentrating, he directed a fierce stream of wind directly towards the surprised opponent. He was once again disappointed as Lin Yun used a third-level technique and created a wall of ice in front of him. Seeing that he was once again unable to cause damage to his opponent, the guy decided to prepare for an elemental blending attack. The improved wind power started to help, and it started to break the ice shield. The princess was surprised that this second-level technique was more in line with the third level in terms of strength. The teacher explained that the young man was skillful at using atmospheric changes to strengthen his techniques. Lin Yun, seeing the cracking shield, warned Zijin to prepare a decisive strike. The young man applied the new technique, the protagonist, to show his true strength and see what he could do with it. Linbo and Hua Yi were amazed at the power of the fifth-level technique used in the battle. Zijin decided to use the second-level technique, Stream of Fire, which began to mix with the flow of wind. Linbo wondered if the combination of fire and wind would be able to resist the element of ice. The princess noticed that the ice bullets had greatly weakened the fire attack. Level 2 technique, Electrocution, shouted the guy, concentrating the energy in his palms. The powerful electric discharge slammed into the opponent's shield with a deafening crackle, causing it to crack. Mujalan exclaimed at the destruction of the defense, but the teacher remarked that it would no longer affect the outcome of the battle. Lin Yun shouted, "Victory is mine!" and raised his hand up, controlling the huge hammer above him. The disciples in the courtyard were astonished to see a fifth-level technique performed by Lin Yun. The young man's opponent, still holding his hand up and holding the hammer, asked if he was going to give up. The guy smugly replied that the opponent shouldn't even think about it, because he was much faster and had already finished preparing his attack, so only he should surrender here. Mujalan shouted to Teacher Gon that they were going to kill each other and hoped that he would stop them. The latter muttered for her not to worry, as he was in control of the situation and continued to watch the battle. Lin Yun couldn't hold back, so he lowered his hand, followed by his hammer, preparing for the strongest impact on the ground. Shi Jin quickly used the fireball technique, directing it at the remnants of the opponent's ice shield. Under the impact of the fire, the shield began to rapidly melt, losing its strength and defensive properties. A powerful hammer blow finally shattered the shield, scattering shards of ice in all directions. A thick cloud of dust enveloped the battle site, hiding the fighters from the gaze of the anxious spectators. The frightened princess began to scream, trying to find out if her friends were all right. As the smoke began to clear, everyone saw the teacher carrying both students out of the fight area. After all, if something happened to the strongest students, he would be in trouble. Lin Yun said that Xijin's attack was faster, so Teacher Gang saved him first, in which case it could be considered that he had won. With a smile, the hero muttered that the opponent was very strong anyway and shook his friend's hand. The frightened Mu Zilan was the first of the friends to run up to the guys and asked if they were all right. Gan happily imagined that thanks to such outstanding students, he would definitely become Teacher of the Year. The backslope of the majestic mountain at the foot of which the famous Royal Training Academy was located was astonishing in its beauty and grandeur. The Royal Training Academy is located at the mountain range called the Demon Mountains. Due to the large amount of spiritual power in the atmosphere of the range, there are many demonic creatures there, hence the name of the mountains. Legends say that in the heart of the range, where no human has ever set foot, there are demons of the 9th and even 10th level. Although the academy is close to the mountains, the spiritual power in the surrounding area is less than at the top, so the demons near the school are weak, and there was only one level 5 creature in the mountains to control the rest. This place was the scene of the entrance exams every year, and the established order here was never broken by anyone. But nothing lasts forever, and when Zijin killed the single level 5 demon, the rest of the inhabitants of this place fell into chaos. The former ruler of the mountains, a level 5 demonic being, had faithfully served the academy for over 300 years, more than most teachers, and had never caused any trouble. The news of his death had caused most of the teachers to worry. To prevent the atmosphere in the team from deteriorating, the academy organized a big picnic for the teachers, and they, giving in to the fun and alcohol, completely forgot about their worries. Only the headmaster was still aware of the danger of the situation. Without his king, the other creatures, fearing the students, would leave the area, and the academy would not be able to hold the annual entrance exam. The headmaster was at a loss, because the centuries-old tradition of holding the exam could not be interrupted while he was in charge of the academy. He couldn't even send someone to find a new high-level creature, because if it didn't choose a new habitat, it would simply run away after being forcibly brought in. His musings were interrupted by the teacher bursting into the office with the news that a new level 5 demonic creature seemed to have taken up residence at the academy. With a note of admiration and hope, the headmaster said, "Really? Hurry up and show it to me." Upon arriving in the forest, the principal couldn't believe his eyes, for he had met. The teacher said that there are evolved demonic creatures in nature that use the spiritual power of the atmosphere, and they are much more dangerous than ordinary ones. But the teacher added that in some areas of the Demon Mountains, humans had not yet set foot in, so it was foolish to think that new types of demonic creatures would no longer be discovered, while Xie Jin was busy drawing without listening. When asked by the princess why he was not listening and drawing, he replied that he was bored, so he decided to practice his little invention. Upon seeing the model, Mujalan, barely holding back tears from realizing her friend's genius, exclaimed, "You call it a small invention? Yes, it looks grand." The young man carelessly declared that he was not likely to need it anyway, for he had drawn it out of boredom. But, laughing, he added that if he did make it, he could sell it to some country for a great deal of money and become the richest man on the planet, while the princess sat frowning in incomprehension. Suddenly, instantly transformed, she asked if Xie Jin would be free after class. The guy replied, "Sure," wondering if his friend wanted to ask him out, and was glad that he had finally waited for it. The teacher interrupted their conversation by saying, "Ahem, ahem," and reminding them that whispering was forbidden in class and silence was required. Embarrassed by the remark, the girl ducked her eyes and the boy, smiling, scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. When they met after class in the courtyard, the young man was curious as to why she had called him. Mujalan confessed that ever since they met, there was one issue that had been plaguing her that she wanted to hear his opinion on. Xie Jin replied that he would try to help, though he wasn't sure if he could, and thought that she probably wanted to confess her love to him, wishing she could hear the words, "I love you," and give him a positive answer. The princess, gathering her courage, blurted out, "Please help me to become stronger." The surprised guy asked if that was it, and the girl continued, reminding him that he knew about the weakness of her innate wind element in dealing damage, but she had been studying it since childhood. With a change in his face, Xie Jin tried to understand why the girl was obsessed with battles and asked if she knew how to develop her strength since wind battle tactics were not as varied. Mujalan agreed that she should follow the manuals and raise her spiritual power to master high-level techniques. But after his fight with Lin Yun, she realized that she was misusing even the techniques she knew. She admitted that she had pondered over it for a few days, trying to solve the problem herself but to no avail, so she had sought his advice. Shyly adding that she hoped not to seem too impudent, she heard the young man say that the two of them, who had agreed to reach the rank of spiritual majority together, were godsend to help each other. He pointed out that although the wind techniques were weak in dealing damage, she had already solved this problem by creating her own technique, Arrow of the Gods. Guy said that she had no problems in that direction, but an even bigger weakness of wind techniques was their uselessness if the enemy got within a certain distance, so he advised her to work on her mobility. Jin advised the princess to focus on improving long-range techniques, ignoring melee combat. Knowing his friend's diligence, he envisioned her becoming a muscular fighter, which didn't appeal to him at all. The thought of how pumped up she would become made his face change, and he began to imagine fighting her off while the girl looked at him like a fool. The princess pondered aloud on ways to increase her mobility in battle. The young man pondered and suggested that she learn to fly using the characteristics of the wind element. Although it was possible, but such a technique would take too much of her spiritual power, so he should think hard, because he clearly had to have a worthwhile idea in his head. Then the princess voiced her thought. If she needed to increase her mobility, then maybe she should just ride a horse during battle. The girl explained the advantages of riding combat, especially considering her steppe background. The young man suggested using a fast demonic creature instead of a horse, planning a quest for tomorrow. The next day they did so, though the girl called all her friends to go, though the lad hoped they would be alone. The princess justified the crowdedness, but the young man worried about scaring away the demonic creatures. Linbo admired Xie Jin's hunting expertise, not realizing his intention to tame rather than kill the demon. Lin Yun said that he just had nothing to do, to which Xie Jin mentally asked him to leave. Hua Yi boasted about the alcoholic picnic she had prepared, which surprised and slightly worried the hero. Lin Yun noticed that Xie Jin had thoughtfully brought his weapon with him. The sword suddenly came to life, happily commenting on the composition of the group and offering a choice of halves. A sudden mysterious sound from the mountains caught the attention of the entire company, making them wary. Lin Worley noticed that the sounds were being made by the numerous demonic creatures lurking in the mountains. Mujilan was perplexed about the return of the demons after Jin defeated a strong level 5 creature. Hua Yi shared a rumor from her teacher about the appearance of a powerful new demon that attracted the others. Linbo puzzledly inquired about the level of the new creature, marveling at her inability to detect it. Jin speculated that the demon had the ability to mask its presence from detection. The young man cautioned his friends to be cautious, especially if the creature surpassed level 5. Unbeknownst to the group, the watching monster lurked just a few meters away, hiding in a dense thicket. Liu Qing, the medicine teacher, was patiently waiting for the water for tea to boil by the fire. The arriving headmaster inquired about the injured man's condition, listening carefully to the healer's report. Luwang reported successful wound healing and a favorable prognosis for the patient's physical recovery. However, she warned about the difficulty and duration of the process of detoxifying the body from the strong poison. The injured man, upon seeing the director enter, guiltily apologized for his oversight. Li Shen thoughtfully noted the increased threat from the demonic creatures and suggested temporarily restricting the student's access to the danger zone. Suddenly, an unsettling premonition gripped the principal, making him frown and tense up. Intuition told the principal that Jin had gotten himself into trouble again. The friends were walking carefree through the forest, enjoying the companionship and beauty of the surrounding nature, unaware of the impending danger. The idyll was broken by the sudden appearance of a creature that snatched Hua Yi's basket of food with lightning speed. Assuming the demonic nature of the kidnapper, the friends were surprised to see a cute cat. Hua Yi shouted a warning to the group about the creature's deceptive appearance. Jin supported his friend, urging the others to remain vigilant against the demonic creature. Hua Yi angrily accused the cat of stealing provisions, while Jin marveled at its priorities in a dangerous situation. After watching the friends squabble, the cat decided to remove itself with its prey. Lin Yun used the ice bullets technique in an attempt to stop the fleeing creature. The nimble cat deftly dodged the attack, and the ice projectiles crashed into the ground. Jin noted the speed of Lin Yun's new technique, but it was insufficient to catch the creature. With a lightning-fast climb up the tree, the cat left its friends stunned. After settling down on a branch, the animal stretched out and cast a disdainful glance at the humans. Lin Yun sensed the cat's disdain, while Lin Bo noted its uncommon intelligence. The princess, unlike the others, admired the grace and agility of the mysterious creature without hiding her delight. After a short time of watching the people, the cat rushed into the forest, and the friends rushed in pursuit. As they pursued the animal, Jin suspected that the cat was deliberately leading them somewhere, despite its clear superiority in speed. The sword warned the young man of the possible danger. The harmless animal could lead them to a more powerful demon. Suddenly, Hua Yi, noticing something disturbing, cried out in panic, urging everyone to stop immediately. The girl turned her friend's attention to the unnaturally wilted trees, sensing danger. Hua Yi warned of the poisonous fumes and urgently handed out an antidote to prevent poisoning. While taking the antidote, the princess speculated that the cat had led them to the habitat of other demonic creatures. Mujilan lost her vigilance and didn't notice a snake descended from a tree right beside her, already opening its mouth for a deadly bite. Jin reacted quickly, pushing the girl away and shooting at the reptile's head with a clean shot. The frightened Mujilan snuggled up to her savior, assuring him of her well-being. Lin Yun shouted, "Watch out!" putting out his hand as if blocking the path of his friends walking behind him. He pointed at the strange foliage, which turned out to be a cluster of poisonous snakes masquerading as vegetation. The friends rallied in a circular defense, supporting each other and repelling the attacks of the numerous snakes. Jin asked the sword in surprise about the warning, but it revealed the existence of a more dangerous snake queen. Jin asked the sword about the snake queen's strength level, anticipating that their encounter with her was imminent and close. After dealing with the numerous snakes, the friends suddenly noticed another huge and terrifying creeping creature. The frightened princess asked in a trembling voice what this creepy and disgusting creature was. The hero loudly commanded Lin Yun to immediately erect a high ice wall for reliable protection. Barely had they had time to take cover behind it before a huge monster crawled past their fragile shelter. Lin Bo excitedly asked Jin if they should run away as soon as possible, but the guy strongly argued that the snake would catch up with them quickly anyway, and at least they were out of its sight now. Lin Yun anxiously came to the disappointing conclusion that sooner or later they would inevitably have to fight the horrible creature anyway. The hero asked Lin Bo, without attracting attention, to strike the snake's scales hard with his sword to test its density and strength. The girl drew her weapon and used a powerful melee technique, but the result was quite pitiful and disappointing. Even after the powerful attack, there wasn't a single scratch left on the snake's scales, which amazed the entire team. If the scales were this strong, even Zijin's special grenades would be useless. Fighting the snake in the open was a very bad idea. The young man tensely wondered where the snake's only weak point might be: its eyes, tail, or perhaps its mouth. Sword suggested using a fast cat to distract the snake, suggesting a long-standing feud between the animals. Shijin cautiously peered out from behind the ice barrier in a vain search for the lurking cat. He was lucky enough to catch a glimpse of a familiar white fur sticking out from behind a log. It was the same furry animal. Jijin, smiling, began to call the cat in a gentle voice, hoping to gain its trust for the next step. Everyone was genuinely happy except for the perpetually disgruntled Hua Yi, who rudely called the cat a brazen thief. The hero seriously asked the cat if she really wanted to get rid of the snake once and for all, and if she would help them in this difficult task. The clever animal closed its eyes understandingly, as if silently agreeing, and the touched princess involuntarily reveled. The affectionate cat gracefully approached the lovely princess, softly meowing and caressing her whole body. Noticing the cat's obvious affection for the lovely Mujalan, the sword advised the boy to ask the girl to concentrate the powerful natural wind power around the animal. The young man politely approached the princess with this unusual request, and she readily agreed. The focused girl began to create a mysterious and palpably powerful energy around the cat, looking fearlessly at her. Suddenly, the miniature fluffy kitty transformed into a truly terrifying, huge giant cat, causing everyone to stare in amazement. The astonished Lin Yun rounded his eyes and opened his mouth, while the admiring princess joyfully exclaimed that the cat had completely absorbed the natural wind power. Shijin explained to his friends in detail his risky, but still had a good chance of success cunning plan. The loyal companions amicably assured the hero of their full and unconditional trust, ready to follow him. Saijin insistently instructed the brave cat to distract the formidable snake by any means possible, strongly emphasizing that the outcome of the battle and the overall victory directly depends on it. The shrewd animal understood everything perfectly well and promptly ran to execute this risky plan. The nimble cat teased the ferocious reptile, skillfully dodging the swift attacks and making the snake constantly miss. Carefully watching this breathtaking spectacle, Ziejin told Lin Bo to prepare to deliver the first apt and crushing strike precisely at the snake's vulnerable eyes. The determined girl, lightning fast, drew her sharp sword and swung rapidly. The enraged snake again failed miserably, unable to catch the fidgety cat. The hero gestured to stop the belligerent Lin Bo, telling her to delay her attack for a while, and sternly ordered Hua Yi to greatly strengthen her combat power. Unlike melee warriors and those using natural techniques, Hua Yi could skillfully transform her spiritual power to repeatedly strengthen others. The young man saw that the cat had cleverly lured the snake directly to their ice shelter and immediately gave Lin Bo a tentative signal to attack. The girl shot at the snake's left eye, and the creature, maddened by the pain, swiftly flew up, dragging Lin Bo behind him. Noticing the blind spot of the blinded snake, Zijin ordered everyone to strictly stick to the left side of the reptile. Lin Bo, balancing on the hilt of the sword thrust into the snake's eye, tried to hold on to its sturdy scales. While the girl distracted the snake, Mujalan and Xiejin, saddled with the cat, prepared to execute the second part of the plan. Deftly skipping along the massive knobby torso of the maddened reptile, the fearless princess threw a mighty piercing arrow of the gods. Snake opened its teeth wide in unbearable pain, trying to devour the pesky humans, but now it was the boy's turn. He used a level 4 crushing technique, a huge ice block that crushed the disgusting snake's head to the ground. With all his might, Zijin shouted to Lin Yun that it was now his star turn. Just in time, why the young man exclaimed, activating the huge hammer technique with a wave of his hand. Lowering his hand, he aimed the hammer at the block of stone protruding from the snake's head, delivering a powerful blow. Ling Bo, who was watching the battle from a tall tree, shouted frustratedly that there was no way they could penetrate the super-strong scales. Despite the snake's increasing hissing, the guy urged his friends to trust him, assuring them of the success of the plan. Mujalan, gathering all her strength, conjured the god's arrow and used the spiral shot technique, aiming it straight at the reptile's mouth. After patiently waiting for the right moment for the snake's mouth to open again, The determined hero grabbed the grenade, pulled the pin, and took aim. His unerringly accurate throw, and the massive body of the snake began to explode in different places, tearing the flesh into bloody shreds. From the deafening explosion, everything was covered in thick, acrid smoke. Zijin and the cat princess hurriedly stepped back, tensely watching the scene. When the choking smoke finally cleared, they were relieved to see the gruesomely mutilated body of the defeated reptile prostrate on the ground. They scrutinized the still body of the snake, fearing the slightest movement and preparing for a possible attack. Convinced of their victory over the reptile, the friends enthusiastically raised their hands, loudly celebrating their success. The grateful Hua Yi praised the heroic Shijin with feeling, saying sincerely that without him, there was no way they would have been able to deal with such a powerful demon. Linyun and Shijin jokingly said that next time they would rather go to a boring class instead of a dangerous adventure, making Mujalan standing next to them laugh heartily. Satisfied with their success, the hero rather stated that they had completely achieved their goal, watching the princess stroking the huge, cute cat affectionately and tenderly. Mujalan hopefully asked the cat if it would be her loyal battle partner, and the intelligent animal happily meowed in agreement. Lixing leisurely drank the fragrant tea in his luxurious study, having already forgotten about the recent anxious premonition about Xiejing. His blissful peace was suddenly disturbed by a terrified teacher who ran in and confusedly announced the terrible news that a powerful level 5 demon near the school had been mercilessly killed by Zijing's grenades. At this news, the stunned headmaster dropped the cup with a trembling hand, shattering it to pieces. Was the restless Zijin deliberately doing this to spite him? Shijin sat cross-legged on the bed, carefully holding the legendary Oblivion Sword in his lap. The young man, prepared to be transported to another world, fearlessly said to the sword, "Shall we go?" Through fascinating conversations with the weapon, the boy learned a lot about its amazing capabilities and mastered the art of transferring to other areas for productive training, this time in the forest. The Sword of Oblivion memorizes all opponents and their techniques, recreating them in the young man's subconscious for realistic training. The first monsters that stood in the way of the brave hero were ferocious demons in the bodies of mighty beasts, against which Jin used his crowning technique, Devil Moon Ice Stream. The resourceful young man also did not forget about his secret and extremely effective weapon, the powerfully exploding deadly grenades. Then it was the turn to demonstrate the capabilities of the newly improved pistol of the valiant hero. Zijin fired it diligently and accurately at the attacking fierce demons, not giving them a chance to escape. But soon realizing that the new gun would not take these creatures, the resourceful guy decided to bring a completely new technique to this world. Not giving up hope on his trusty weapon, Zijin used the devastating technique of multiple shots, ready to fight to the last man. After defeating the terrifying animals, the smug young man thought, "How incredibly tough I am. I'm getting high on myself." The legendary Lu Xiao came out of the mysterious forest and offered to fight without guns to test his true skills. Shijin asked in amazement how Lu Xiao could talk, since they were in the young man's subconscious mind. The Oblivion Sword explained that he personally controlled this body, and it would be much harder to defeat him than all the other creatures in this mental world. Jin exclaimed in delight that the sword could do such a thing, and then playfully asked if the weapon could turn into a beautiful girl. The sword resented the young man's idea of sleeping with him, even in the guise of a girl. The boy playfully suggested that the sword could have been a beautiful lady before the transformation. In a rage, the sword shouted that Jin had angered him and would now be turned into a girl as punishment. The frightened young man pleaded with the sword to stop and let's talk this out. But it was too late. The angry sword actually kept its menacing word and turned the lad into a beautiful, shy girl. The opponent shouted menacingly, "Well, let's begin!" and swiftly pounced on the hero in the guise of a fragile girl. The guy began to repel the swift attack with what he had in his hand. A pistol, which, of course, could not withstand the impact of the powerful sword and broke in two. Shijin exhaled that it was lucky they were in his subconscious. Otherwise, he would have had to answer for the broken gun, then drew his sword for defense. The fight was incredibly hot and tense. The opponents fought on equal footing, not yielding to each other. But suddenly, creating a small pause in the battle, they crossed swords and the guy realized this is his chance. Lightning grabbing a pistol, Shijin shot directly at the head of the hated enemy. The bullet didn't do much damage to the enemy, only throwing him back, but he immediately jumped to his feet and began to swing his sword furiously. The enemy was furious, and he summoned an army of loyal guards to help him. Fearless warriors rushed into battle to defend their formidable lord, ready to fight to the last man. Shijin would not be himself if he had not saved grenades for such an occasion, which he promptly took out and threw into the thick of the enemy troops. There was a deafening explosion. Everything was covered with thick smoke, and the young man, taking advantage of the zero visibility of the enemy, decided to stealthily approach him for a decisive blow. As he got very close to the enemy, Xiejin began to summon a powerful fire technique that was capable of incinerating everything in its path. With one crushing blow, he shattered the ice mirror with the reflection of the enraged enemy, who was helplessly watching his defeat. Still standing in front of the young man in the form of a girl, the enemy watched in bewilderment as he concentrated on twirling something fiery in his hand. Meanwhile, Xiejin was creating a huge flaming ball technique that would bring about the enemy's imminent doom. Directing the sizzling ball directly at the enemy, the hero sent it flying. The exhausted enemy stopped after hitting a tree and said that if Xiejin didn't limit himself to close combat techniques, he could easily defeat Lu Xiao. The young man replied that instead of praise, he would prefer to return to his real body as soon as possible. Lu Xiao argued that the fight wasn't over yet, as he was still alive, and offered to kill him. He asked why he would do that, as they were only in his subconscious and the defeated enemy had no strength left to resist. He had never killed anyone before, but his mentor argued that to gain true strength, a hero had to go through it, and it was better to do it here for the first time so that he would be ready for it in the real world. Xiejin replied firmly that he would only kill if absolutely necessary, and he did not wish to become a ruthless killer just yet. Sword began to say that the young man was too naive and would one day regret his decision, for it could lead to terrible consequences. Not having heard enough, Xiejin interrupted the sword, saying that he had enough advice for today and let the mentor keep it to himself because he was dead tired and hoped for a quick end to the training. But it was not to be. The sword said that the training for today was not over, and it was necessary to increase the difficulty a little. Suddenly, the academy director, swordsmanship master Lin Lei, and Lord Gao Yuan himself appeared in front of the young man. The terrified hero cried out, begging for help, and dropped his sword from his lap in terror. The outraged Xiejin accused the sword of sadism for such a prank and tried to break his mentor against his knee. The sword rebuked the young man for being ungrateful and for missing his chance to fight with level 10 warriors. Xiejin asked how the sword had recreated in his subconscious the director and General Gao Yun, whom he had not fought. The sword warned against underestimating his experience and admitted that the information from the student's memory was enough to fully recreate the opponents. The boy asked about the criteria for dividing warriors into levels, because the more battles, the more difficult it was to determine them. Sword said that before warriors were simply divided into strong and weak, and levels were introduced later as a standard for ease of training, citing the example of spiritual techniques from a mixture of spiritual and natural power. The mentor explained, the power of a spiritual technique depended on the amount of spiritual and natural energies transformed for it, increased by hard training. In other words, the more powerful a warrior is, the more power he can put into a technique, and this is called vertical growth. At the same time, if two warriors of different levels try to create the same technique, the higher leveled one will succeed faster. This is horizontal development. Xiejin impatiently stated that he knew all this himself and asked the sword to better explain why there was a need to divide warriors into levels at all. The mentor pointed out that a warrior's progress would slow down if he continued practicing the techniques of the third level after reaching the fourth level, so it was necessary to follow the golden mean. A level 4 warrior trying to learn a level 6 technique would encounter insurmountable resistance, comparable to an untrained person trying to lift 250 kilograms, which could cost them their life. The first deity, considering the spiritual and natural powers of the techniques, divided them into levels for the safety and efficiency of the warrior's training. That was the main point of such gradation. The mentor confirmed that even mighty warriors a level below the deities risked death at the hands of a mere brigand, so a hero should be on guard regardless of his strength and skills. The shrewd sword figuratively compared their dangerous world to thrilling movies, emphasizing the reality of the threat to heroes. A tired-looking Xiejin cut his mentor short, signaling that he understood everything and asked him to stop the lecture, hoping that the sword would finally fall silent. Suddenly, the young man asked if he had understood correctly that everyone except the deities should be careful, and asked who they were. The sword mysteriously replied, if he knew who they were, he wouldn't be a mere blade and wouldn't put up with Saijin's antics. This is the ultimate mystery of the universe. With a yawn, the boy suggested to finish, complaining of hunger and wishing he could find the princess to get some food. Upon approaching Mujalan's room, the young man rubbed his eyes in amazement, unable to believe what he saw. The girl's room was filled with cat toys and devices, as if the princess had become a slave to the cat. When Mujalan looked up, she slightly startled. She asked if Xiejin had seen Lin Yun, who hadn't been seen at all in the past few days. The young man replied that he had heard that his friend had gone home on some business and wondered if he had not returned yet. Furious, Lin Yun shouted out to his companion, clarifying whether he had correctly understood that their family should support the Gao family no matter what. Explain to me why, he shouted again to the guy standing by the window, looking pensively into the distance. You shouldn't talk to me in such a disrespectful tone. You better calm down and have some tea, advised his brother to the agitated Lin Yun. Lin Yun tried to object. Brother, I've thought it over and I think... But he was abruptly cut off by his angry interlocutor. He very seriously asked the subdued young man if he hadn't just told him to silently sip his tea first. The brother asked if the young man had come home from a distant academy just for the sake of this unpleasant conversation. He asked him if he understood that the stubborn Lin Yun was determined to resign from the Gao family at any cost, and he asked about the reasons for his radical desire. Lin Yong explained that the Gao family, having a high position and being responsible for the protection of the city, did not fulfill their direct duties, but were busy eliminating the opposition and opposing new forces, hampering the development of the country. The interlocutor praised the young student's political knowledge, but found it insufficient. Lin Yun's face darkened, expressing his disapproval of his brother's position. Lin Yun noticed Lin Yun's obvious displeasure, but still resolutely continued his interrupted monologue. He revealed that in addition to the imperial family of Hellion and their Lin family, Tian Ming had the Gao family controlling security, the Yan family maintaining the economy, and the Xia family managing the army. Hellion said that this structure dates back to the founding of the country, when 5 powerful families united to heroically stop the chaos and jointly formed the indestructible Tian Ming. Shangbo, the influential head of the Yan family, respectfully picked up the empress's story, adding that they owed it all to the unparalleled feats of their great ancestors. He went on to say that the current generation only has to cherish and tirelessly multiply the priceless family business they have inherited. The empress praised Shangbo, noting that he was the only one who could so skillfully manage a vast country as a well-oiled family business. The head of the Yan family was not without pride, revealing that their illustrious family has successfully run numerous businesses in a variety of key industries across the country for generations. The empress noted that their 2 families have historically enjoyed a strong and mutually beneficial relationship, while the Gao family has not fared so well. Today, the importance of internal defense has decreased due to the peaceful life of the people. In addition, the Gao family hadn't produced any outstanding personalities in a long time, and General Yuan had barely reached the 9th level. Lin Yun was perplexed and asked why the Gao family couldn't, like the enterprising Yan and Xia, try to poach talented young boys from other families. The income and warriors of the affiliated families eventually belonged to the Yan and Xia families, but you have to raise your own warriors. A relative pointed out an interesting fact. The strongest close combat warrior of recent years was born in the oppressed Gao Lin family. Although Gao Yuan was the same age as Ling Lei, he had always lost to him in his childhood. The brother continued that when the country was founded, the Gao and Xia families, who provided external and internal security, were of great importance to the entire human race. Lin Yun's brother ironized Lord Gao having to solve the problems created by his ancestors for the sake of proximity to the emperor. Lin Yun couldn't understand if the Gao family was really in such an unenviable position, then why support it? His brother rebuked the young man for his short-sightedness, because it was not only the Gao family's problem. The empress sat up straight and turned to Shangbo, hoping to hear his opinion on the matter that was troubling her. The issue was the crisis of their system of government, which was based on the 5 noble families. Hedyan replied that once upon a time, when society was weak, the 5 families, by fighting back the external threat and establishing internal order, had ensured that people could live safely. Figuratively speaking, They had voluntarily become an impenetrable shell, safely protecting the little defenseless chick. The frightened Linlin timidly asked if she had correctly understood that when the chick society became stronger and wanted to proudly fly up. Xiangbo confirmed her hunch, finishing weightily, "It will ruthlessly break the shell, holding it back." A startled Linyan muttered that today it was the Gao family, but when would it be the Lin family's inevitable turn? The brother asked if Lin Yun wanted the Gao's resignation because he was afraid of their revenge against friend Ye Jin. The young man didn't deny it, adding that Xie Jin was the son of powerful spiritual deities. Lin Yun's brother indifferently speculated about the possibility of killing Xie Jin, who was not a spiritual deity. A worried Lin Yun asked about the risk of his parents' revenge. In response, he pointed out the massive consequences of such a revenge on the entire human race, emphasized the connection between power and responsibility, reminding them of their family's duty to be aware of this relationship. Lord Gao Yuan, immersed in important written matters, was working intently at his massive desk. An unexpected knock on the study door interrupted the Lord's musings, and a visitor announced the arrival of the Jian and Lin families. Gao Yuan ordered to serve the guests exquisite tea, but cautioned against overzealousness in serving them. The Lord expressed his displeasure at having to do business with less powerful families, pondering their possible requests. Heading towards the waiting guests, Gao Yuan unexpectedly bumped into his son on his way across the courtyard. Not wanting to engage in conversation, the Lord deliberately ignored his son, passing by without a word. Chen, realizing his guilt, tried to apologize to his father for the trouble he had caused the family. The young man offered to break the family ties, hoping to assuage the emperor's anger over the Lu Xiao incident. Gao Yuan, mollified, comforted his son, assuring him that he would find a way to settle the problems without extreme measures. Leaving, the Lord advised his offspring to focus on studying with Master Bilu to master the mysteries of the spiritual flame. Gao Chen, watching his father leave, continued to ponder his words and his role in the future of the family. Suddenly, the heir heard a female voice praising Gao Yuan's diplomatic talents, which reawakened his anger. The disciple abruptly turned around, demanding an explanation from the female mentor whose cryptic words had agitated him so much. Bai Lu hinted at the futility of the Lord's efforts, emphasizing that the future of their clan now depended on someone else's will. The master whispered to the apprentice that his personal fate was also threatened by outside interference. Realizing the rightness of the teacher, young Gao at first flared up, but quickly realized the gravity of the situation. Leaning over, the young man asked his mentor to help him become stronger in order to protect his family. Pearl remarked with a slight chuckle that the path to strength would be long and would require serious training. She predicted that with hard work, Chen could reach the rank of a strong adept in decades and led the frowning disciple along. Intrigued by her ulterior motives, Chen decided to directly ask about his training goals and future plans. Bai Lu, smiling, inquired the reason for such an unexpected question from her ward. The heir of House Gao expressed suspicion of the teacher's hidden intentions, given her superior strength and unexpected appearance. Admiring her disciple's insight, the mentor nodded approvingly, noting his growing observation. Lin Yun, frustrated by his failed attempt to persuade his older brother, slowly wandered through the alleys of the academy, immersed in gloomy thoughts. Suddenly, Xie Jin, overjoyed by his comrade's return, jumped out from behind a pillar and leaped at Lin Yun in a friendly manner. The classmate jokingly asked what kind of trouble Lin Yun had gotten himself into during his absence. The friends compared the peculiarities of family relationships in noble houses and ordinary families, noting the striking differences. Lin Yun was amazed to learn about the divine origins of his friend's parents, something he hadn't even realized before. Xijin explained that he had not deliberately concealed this information, but that he had never been interested in his lineage. Xijin jokingly rebuked his friend and suggested that with such a status, he should have been more omniscient. Putting a hand on Lin Yun's shoulder, Xijin continued to question his friend about the latest developments in his family. Lin Yun's mood darkened as he told his friend about the precarious situation of the Gao family being attacked by ill-wishers after the incident with Lu Xiao. Xijin expressed doubts about the wisdom of helping the Gao family, pointing out the risk of worsening relations with other clans and the possible negative consequences. Xijin, while recognizing his provincial experience, still noted his deep understanding of aristocratic arrangements and suggested that he trusted the decision of the heads of the noble houses to preserve the Gao family. Lin Yun, surprised by his friend's insight, couldn't hold back his laughter, covering his mouth with his hand in surprise. An intrigued Xie Jin inquired about the reason for the hilarity, to which Lin Yong quoted his brother about the burdens of power and the limitations of freedom. Inspired by his friend's reaction, Lin Yong resolutely declared his intention to hold the Gao family accountable for their reckless actions. Sai Jin, imbued with the idea, expressed his willingness to support his friend. Sealing the agreement with a symbolic gesture, the friends clenched their fists, ready to face the challenges of high society together. Xijin, frustrated by his powerlessness in the intrigues of the high nobility, wobbled in his chair, realizing the impossibility of helping his friend without money and influence. The young man, gripped by despair, contemplated using his parents' names to deceive the undecided nobles, hoping to gain an advantage. Unexpectedly, the empress who appeared on the windowsill advised him to abandon the idea, reminding him of the widespread popularity of his lineage. Xijin, surprised by the sudden visit, inquired about the reason for her presence and how she had managed to go unnoticed. Helian jumped into the room and explained that no one would dare to spy on her for fear of rebellion. Taking a seat on the bed, the girl warned that she had not come for small talk, but for an important matter concerning the young man. Xijin, slightly amused, inquired about the purpose of her visit and what she wanted from him. The empress asked a direct question about the young man's plans for the Gao family, adopting a casual pose. This unexpected question puzzled Xijin, who couldn't understand the true intentions of his high-ranking guest. She explained that the nobles, led by the Li family, intended to preserve the Gao clan, emphasizing the need for a significant force to oppose this decision. Xijin inquired about the possibility of using his true identity, noting the difficulty in hiding it. Linlin explained that the real problems lie outside of his current capabilities, emphasizing the importance of Lin Song as strength and currency in the country. And since the young man is Lin Song's son, is his weakness. Helian asked if the young man would be able to withstand the constant scrutiny of multiple rank 9 adepts, which made Xijin turn pale, not wanting to find out. The girl warned that prematurely revealing his identity would force her to keep him in a harem for protection. The young man was surprised at the mention of a harem, but the empress clarified that there was food, clothing, and a bed much more comfortable than his broken one. Xijin sat down next to him and wondered if the empress could solve the issue of the Gao family's survival, but she explained the difficulty of such a solution. Realizing the futility of hoping for the empress, the young man began to analyze the capabilities of his friends in this matter. Remembering everyone, he realized that everyone was powerless. Helian spoke of the many opponents of the Gao family who had changed their stance after the Lin family intervened. The empress advised that they should search for a powerful enough force to oppose the Lin family and attract supporters. She hinted at the importance of ties with the Royal Academy, which puzzled the young man, making him think about the influence of the institution. The empress emphasized the great influence of the academy, pointing out the many strong people and its deep roots in Qianming country. Xijin expressed concern that such power of the academy could pose a hidden threat to national security. Helian enigmatically asked if the young man knew the principal's real name. Her strange behavior was understandable, after all. His name was Helian Tiancheng, and he had a direct connection to the ruling dynasty. Xijin, realizing the importance of the situation, went to the headmaster to ask for the necessary intervention. The old man doubted the advisability of action, emphasizing the seriousness of the consequences for the state system. The young man explained that the fall of the Gao family could lead to the elimination of the other 4 noble families. The headmaster had no way of understanding why Xijin was willing to risk national stability for the sake of friendship. The young man pointed out the inevitability of historical change and the failure of the current noble system. He pointed out the selfish interests of the Gao family and their abandonment of their original duties to the state. Xijin warned of the decline of the Tianming kingdom and the rise of the people's desire for freedom while maintaining the current situation. He emphasized the need for initiative in solving the problem rather than simply covering it up. The young man suggested that Empress Linlin had realized the situation before she started looking for an opportunity to change it. Xijin confidently told the headmaster that everyone involved understood the seriousness of their actions. Helian Tiancheng expressed his willingness to support the initiative, but emphasized the need for the consent of the teachers and students of the academy. Sai Jin was faced with the task of convincing the student council or finding a way to replace it to advance his plan. Sai Jin was aggressively surprised by the existence of a student council in the academy, which he had not known about before. The principal explained that the council was an important self-governing body, electing representatives and participating in the academy's decision-making. The boy realized that he could convince the current student council, but was perplexed as to why the principal hinted at the need to replace them. With a mysterious smile, the principal asked if Xiejin was willing to be the key figure in the upcoming confrontation. One of the student council members was surprised at the personal visit of such an important guest, calling it a troublesome matter. Such a stunned reaction was to Lin Yun's older brother, whom no one expected to see at the academy. The student bowed, asking how he could help, and explained that he had only inherited the office of his predecessors who had finished their studies and returned to their families, so he dared not change anything. Brother Yun assured that entrusting him with the student council was the most correct of all the decisions he had made. The Lin family representative continued the conversation, hinting at the academy's position, which the student should understand without further ado. The student inquired about Lin Yu's plans, leaning slightly and lowering his voice as if he feared that they would be overheard. The elder Lin brought his hand down sharply on the armrest, squeezing it with barely contained fury, and curtly ordered a harsh lesson to be taught to his younger brother. The council representative calmly leaned back on the back of the sofa and offered to enjoy the upcoming performance with undisguised excitement. Chen Hingli, the student council president, portrayed sympathy and noted the difficulties the guest was facing because of his unruly younger brother. Also present in the spacious room was Vice President Feng Ming, an earnest young man wearing a sleek monocle, who was watching intently. Accountant Yan Jingjing, a spectacular young woman with unusual pink hair, urged her colleagues to exercise restraint in taking action against the younger generation. Secretary Xia Jikyu resented the annoying struggles and injustices of the world, which she hated and which made her sad. Suddenly, Xijin came up to them from the street, waving hello and asking if he was interrupting an important meeting. The irritated student council president, as if the young man had interrupted his stardom, sharply inquired about the identity of the uninvited guest. Lin Yun's older brother, without turning around, immediately introduced Xiejin as his brother's friend, who had defeated Lu Xiao in the imperial competition. Chen Qingli, who had never heard of Xiejin before, wondered with poorly concealed irritation why he dared to enter without knocking. The young man, smiling awkwardly and blushing slightly, said that he had intended to knock, but found that there were no doors in the room. Yan Jingjing irritably reminded him that the day before yesterday, the president himself, forgetting his key, broke down the door that she had no time to fix and asked him to save his budget. Upon entering, Xiejin found himself face-to-face with the main body of the student council and Lin Yun's influential brother. The accountant mercilessly reprimanded the president, which stunned Zijin. He could hardly believe that this powerful person was still a student. Vice President Feng Ming turned to Xiejin with undisguised curiosity, inquiring about the true purpose of his visit to the student council. Overcoming his sudden excitement, the hero began to slowly and carefully formulate the reason for his appearance, but was abruptly interrupted. Ling Yun's back-seated brother unceremoniously intervened, stating the agreement he had reached with the student council, causing the academy to refuse to support Xiejin's initiatives. The young man objected, reporting his recent meeting with the principal and the approval he had received, confidently stating that the academy would not side with the opponents. Chen Qingli, not hiding his indignation, expressed extreme surprise at Saijin's audacity in daring to address the esteemed Lin Yu so disrespectfully. Lin Yu carefully placed his cup on the table and coldly asked him not to provoke him, emphasizing that because of the disagreement between teachers and students, the college would remain neutral, which meant that he would win. Finally turning around, his brother said that despite his status, Xiajin had no chance of defeating the Lin family. Lin Yun suddenly burst into the tense atmosphere, cheerfully greeting his brother and wondering why he hadn't visited him in the first place. The friend said, having heard from the young man and worried that he would fail, he had come to support him. Lin Yu, slowly rising from his chair, noted that his brother had made a good friend, although he himself was not satisfied with his decision. He was proud of Lin Yun's courage to challenge him and thought it was the right decision to send him to the academy. He added that he had finished the first game of chess, but to start the second would depend on the abilities of Xiejin and Lin Yong. Chen Qingli, deciding to refrain from commenting, directly addressed Lin Yong and Xiejin, demanding to reveal their future plans and intentions. The friends looked at each other and I confidently stated that in accordance with the Academy's rules on student affairs, they intended to challenge the current student. The astonished girls looked at each other and wondered if something like this had happened before in the Academy's history. Shijin, gesturing enthusiastically, proposed to form a cohesive team capable of gathering the necessary number of supporters to form a new student union and challenge the current student body. Lingbo, gratefully recalling Shijin's past help, decisively took his hand, declaring her willingness to support his endeavor, causing Mu Zhilan, who was jealously watching, to be clearly displeased. The princess, unwilling to give in, also grabbed the young man's hand, emphasizing that Ziejin and Ling Yun were her close friends, whom she was obligated to help in return for their past support. Hua Yi, being cautious, asked if there were additional prerequisites for college students to challenge the current council at will. Shijin explained that usually when the student union changes its membership, the new membership itself chooses its successor, but there is an alternative way. The young man clarified that in order to successfully challenge the student union, they would need to get the support of at least a third of all students in the college, instructing Lin Yun to take care of this aspect. Jida noted the Lin family's high reputation in the college, especially highlighting the influence of Lin Yu, Lin Yun's brother, the former legendary president of the student union. Shijin, smirking, noted their group's popularity among the freshmen, emphasizing the youth's love of excitement and willingness to support the initiative against the strict student union, even though most students were unlikely to be interested in their fight against Lin Yu. Lin Yong, returning, reported the successful persuasion of the freshmen and the considerable support received, outlining the next step to involve the upperclassmen. Shijin, thanking his friend for his work, inquired about the details of the information he had received, while Lin Yong quenched his thirst with a cup of tea. Lin Yong explained the importance of martial arts in the academy, suggesting a show of strength to win the students' recognition and right to challenge. Lin Yun suggested that his friends prepare for arena fights against the senior students, emphasizing their key role in the upcoming battles, to which Shijin asked in surprise at the simplicity of the proposed solution. Lin Yun explained that it was a temporary reprieve to gain support and improve their skills before a difficult confrontation with a strong student union. Lin Bo inquired about the strength level of the current student union members. Lin Yun, showing interest in the opponent's strength, said that President Chen Qingli had reached an impressive 7th level, comparable to some academy teachers. Vice President Feng Ming is rumored to be a level 6 expert, but his calm demeanor suggests that there is hidden level 7 potential. Accountant Yan Jingjing and Secretary Xia Jiqiu, being a year younger than the council leaders, have reached the 5th level of strength. He emphasized that because of their affiliation with the 4 major families, they could not be considered ordinary 5th-level spiritual and martial arts practitioners. Shijin smugly remarked that with the exception of the president, the strength of the rest of the council members did not seem impressive, not noticing the reaction of the people around him to his statement. Lin Bo attributed his friend's arrogant statement to his own strength, while Lin Yun noted that even the weakest of the 4 council members he mentioned was not inferior to them in terms of strength. Shijin pondered the possibility of challenging the student union by position or individually, figuring out the number of victories needed to succeed. Lin Yun explained that a convincing victory was necessary to maintain his position on the council, achieving at least 2 wins and 1 draw. Guy proposed a plan whereby he and Lin Yong would challenge the secretary and accountant of the council, securing the necessary victories. Mujilin resented that she and Lin Bo were only statisticians, although she inwardly recognized the correctness of the strategy. Hua Yi tactfully pointed out the inappropriateness of some of Shijin's remarks, to which the young man hurriedly apologized, calling his words casual. Lin Yun, showing determination, declared the valuable opportunity to fight strong opponents and unwillingness to retreat. The girls unanimously supported the desire to defeat their opponents, showing confidence in their own abilities. Lin Yong, after making an assessment, reported that it would take at least 2 months of intensive training to get enough support and preparation. Shijin, recognizing the genius of his friends, reminded them to make a public statement in front of the senior students and create an arena for taking on challenges. The next day, an impressive crowd of students gathered near the stage, exceeding the expectations of the organizers. Shijin stepped up to the podium, admitted his excitement as he recalled his speech at the beginning of the semester, and introduced himself to the crowd. Before he could explain the reason for the gathering, the young man was unexpectedly hugged from behind by the student council president, who also greeted the crowd. The stunned hero pulled back, not understanding what was happening and trying to comprehend his opponent's unexpected behavior. Shijin's friends were stunned by the sudden appearance of the council president, whom no one had noticed until that moment. Chen Qingli inquired with feigned surprise about the reason for the meeting, ironically asking if he had been expelled from the student council. "You don't recognize me because you haven't seen me." "Shocked at first sight?" Chen Qingli said disdainfully. "Aren't I your brother? In fact, I'm your father's illegitimate son and older than you." "Call me Big Brother," the young man cheekily stated, although it was a lie considering their different surnames. The crowd of students froze in embarrassed silence, depressed as they watched the situation unfold on the stage. The disturbed atmosphere threw Sijin's friends into confusion, while the princess anxiously watched the young man's every move. Yejin, clearly annoyed by the proximity of the student council president, got into a verbal altercation with him, to which Chen Qingli tried to reduce it to a harmless joke. The young man played along and told a fictitious story about his father's illegitimate child, hinting at a possible kinship with Chen Qingli and their resemblance. The student council president, stunned and slightly startled, incredulously interrogated about their supposed resemblance. Shijin wryly mocked his opponent's appearance, advising him to look in the mirror more often and stop fooling himself. Chen Qingli, appreciating the young man's wit, praised his sense of humor, comparing it to his own. Shijin, restraining the impulse to continue the barbed exchange of remarks, inquired about the true reason for the president's appearance. Chen Qingli nonchalantly stated his desire to simply observe, offering to leave if his presence was unwelcome. The young man, after rejecting the offer to leave, continued his speech, beginning with full confidence. "I am Xie Jin, and these are my classmates." He pointed his hand at the friends standing next to him, introducing each in turn. Lin Yun was the heir to an influential family. Lin Bo was a consummate martial artist, and Mujilan was a princess of a distant kingdom. The young man announced the decision to form a new student union and demanded that the representatives of the current council be summoned to formally announce the challenge. The crowd murmured, realizing the popularity of the aforementioned personalities and the potential power of the new student council, which made Zi Jin watch the audience's reaction with pride. Yi Jin, realizing the difficulty of gaining recognition from the upperclassmen, declared his willingness to openly accept a challenge from any student in the school to prove his strength. Chen Qingli, ostentatiously applauding, called the idea interesting, but immediately tried to cool the ardor of the freshmen. The student council president reminded him that a mere show of strength was not enough to qualify for the challenge and the required number of votes. The young man indifferently replied that he was confident that the majority of students would support his idea. Chen Qingli grinned and hinted at Xiejin's misunderstanding of the essence of the student union and the sentiments of the students, thus arousing the lad's suspicion of hidden intentions. The president, standing at the podium and raising his hand, urged the students to vote for the boy's ability to replace the current council. Xiejin, not hiding his indignation, sharply accused Chen Qingli of trying to manipulate the students' opinions and exert unacceptable pressure on them. However, the young man suddenly faltered, struck by an unexpected sight. Almost everyone present raised their hands in agreement with the student council president's proposal. Chen Qingli, pointing at the crowd with barely concealed smugness, ironically remarked that the situation was not that bad, and many people really wanted to oust the current council in favor of the newcomers. The president said with a bitter chuckle that their student union had the lowest level of support in the college's history, and it was only the losers' lack of courage that kept them in power. Zijin, somewhat confused by this turn of events, heard from his opponent that they had unexpectedly gained support easily to challenge the student union. Chen Qingli, while maintaining a semblance of friendliness, advised to go to teacher Wenjin to officially start the challenge. Teacher Wenjin Zhengping, who suddenly appeared, exclaimed happily that he had been waiting for such a challenge to the council for a long time, and asked Xiejin to give him some pleasant surprises. The teacher explained that his department would organize the venue and rules of the competition, ensuring maximum fairness for all participants without exception. Xiejin, holding back his impatience, inquired about the date of the first fight, to which Wenjin explained that many of the venues needed repairs after a long period of downtime, so the competition would not begin until next month at the earliest. Hearing this information, the young man inwardly tensed up, remembering Lin Yun's words about the necessary 2 months of preparation, and realized with dismay that their training time had been cut in half. Chen Qingli, pleased with the effect he had produced, stated with feigned concern that he had helped make it easier for the newcomers, and reminded Xie Jin of his promise to accept challenges from all comers, adding that he had many friends eager to test their mettle in a duel. The young man was stunned by the unexpected turn of events, realizing that all of his carefully laid plans had been disrupted. "This isn't just a tactic, he's truly insane," Xie Jin exclaimed, to which Lin Yun remarked with a slight chuckle that Chen Qingli was indeed an outstanding individual. Princess Jilin sighed heavily, noting that it was no wonder why they found so little information about the student council. Apparently, its members were not overzealous in their duties. Linbo suggested that they focus on improving their skills in the time remaining and announced her intention to return to the dojo for intensive training. Lin Yun decided to go home to seek advice from his family's experts. Jijin, after thinking about it, clarified whether he was correct in realizing that the princess would be training with him in that case. Teacher Gan suddenly appeared and said that he would personally take care of Mujilan's development. After all, it was the teacher's job. He praised Zijin for his sufficient strength and advised him to pay more attention to the trends in the college, remaining as a decoy for potential suitors. The young man realized the teacher's rightness, but did not understand the reasons for his unexpected help. Teacher Gang hugged the student and explained that the freshman's victory could contribute to his promotion to class leader. The hero went outside to see his friends off as they prepared for an intense training session. Left alone, the young man decided to visit the academy's famous dining hall. The Royal Training Academy was famous for its canteen, which was staffed by true professionals in the culinary arts. This place was considered a shrine in the culinary world due to the first-generation Linzen's concept of forbidding torturing children with food at the founding of the school. The academy's dining hall attracted the country's best chefs, offering a variety of cuisines and even legendary lost delicacies. The openness of the student kitchen attracted young chefs eager to perfect their skills, raising a generation of culinary masters. Due to its location east of the imperial capital, the college became known as the Oriental Culinary Institute, becoming a center of attraction for gourmets and future chefs. Many students sought admission to the college not so much for the sake of academic achievement, but for the opportunity to enjoy the exquisite cuisine of the famous dining hall. Even the prestigious university dining hall was not without its traditional shortcomings. One of them was the sloppiness of the cooks who, citing shaky hands, often scattered food when serving. Jijin, noticing the flying food, deftly caught all the pieces into his plate. Thanking the cook with a smile, the young man assured him that everything was fine. After paying for his lunch, Jijin caught the attention of a girl who sadly thought about having to struggle even for food. This girl turned out to be the secretary of the student council, who condemned Xiaojin for provoking a conflict with the council. "I can't help it. I'm a man with a big appetite. If I don't fight for my portion, I risk going hungry according to local rules," Xiaojin explained as he stuffed his food down his throat. The young man was surprised to notice the difference in portion sizes between himself and his interlocutor, asking about this differentiation. "What are you dissatisfied with? Do you have enough money, or are you afraid that the cooks will be cheated?" the secretary asked, pulling out money for payment. "This is the most sincere trust relationship between me and the chef," said the girl, but suddenly changed in her face as if she was ashamed. The chef, who was waiting for payment, also noticed the change in the customer's facial expression and was upset to learn that she had forgotten her wallet. The kitchen worker didn't hesitate to take away the plate of food, leaving the secretary without lunch, which caused Zijin to remark on the cruelty of trusting relationships. Realizing that she would be left hungry, the girl looked pleadingly at Zijin, silently asking for help. The young man had no choice but to pay for the girl's order, after which, feeling awkward, they walked away from the food stand together. Shoujikyu thanked Zijin for paying for her lunch, calling him a good person and apologizing for her previous negative opinion. Shijin admitted that this was the first time he had ever been praised, causing a fleeting smile to appear on the girl's face. Yachin sat at the far table, avoiding looking at the secretary eating lunch across from him, but couldn't bring himself to eat due to the tense atmosphere and discussions about his intention to challenge the student council. Unable to stand the gossip about his possible relationship with Lin Yun, the young man jumped up, loudly urging those around him to stop or face trouble. Gradually calming down, he suddenly heard the girl ask him if he would give her the piece of meat he was holding with chopsticks if he didn't want to eat it himself. Before Zijin could even utter a word, Xiaojikyu started eating the meat right off his chopsticks, and the young man resented that he was going to eat it. Pulling away from the meat connected to her mouth by a string of saliva, The girl nonchalantly asked if he was feeling sorry for her. Apologizing, she said that she thought the young man wouldn't eat the overbite and offered to let him finish the piece if he wanted. Jijin smilingly praised the girl's appetite and offered to eat it all, not wanting to upset her interlocutor and finish it for her. An overjoyed Xiaojikyu gratefully accepted the offer and continued eating from Shijin's chopsticks. Some strange, the hero thought as he observed the unusual behavior of the girl opposite. Xiaojikyu licked her fingers with obvious pleasure, making Jijin assume that she really enjoyed the food. Xiaojikyu explained her attitude towards food by talking about her childhood in the frontier army, where food was a strategic resource and the importance of every bite for the soldier's survival. Shijin wondered about the girl's origin from the Xia family and the possible impact it might have on the relationship between the Xia and Gao families. The young man directly asked Xiaojikyu if she knew the reasons for their challenge to the student union, wanting to hear her opinion. The young girl suggested that the reason could be the disagreement between brothers Lin Bo and Lin Yang regarding the Gao family, which could lead to a conflict affecting everyone around them. Shijin expressed surprise that a member of the warlord family hated battles so much, contrasting with his expectations. Xiaojikyu tearfully explained that any conflict tends to expand, drawing in more and more people and deepening the hatred between them. The girl emotionally uttered the words war and death, clearly reliving painful memories. Destruction. As a member of the Xia family, I deeply understand that pointless fighting only brings endless misery, Xiaojikyu finished with pain in her voice. However, the young man reminded that as long as humans existed, conflicts of interest were inevitable, and such thoughts could only cause pain. The girl agreed, emphasizing the importance of the Xia family's role in this context, which caused Jijin to be surprised. The people around them began to discuss how two young people could have such philosophical conversations without paying attention to what was going on around them. One of the people discussing the young man turned to him, asking if he was really the same Jijin. Shijin turned around and asked if these were the people Chen Qinglin had sent to challenge him. The strangers hurriedly explained that they had nothing to do with the student union, calling its members crazy, and admitted that they were only acting because of the benefits promised by the vice president. The young man sighed and offered to go out and solve the problem, remembering that teacher Wenjin had allowed the test to be conducted without teacher supervision. Xiaojikyu, quoting the Xia family's military regulations, courageously offered to help Shijin with these guys in gratitude for the treats. Recognizing the girl as the secretary of the student council, the strangers began to retract their words about crazy people, clearly afraid of the consequences. Shijin, remembering Xiaojikyu's dislike for fighting, offered to deal with these guys himself so she wouldn't take any action. The secretary explained that although she hated fights, she hated it even more when they happened right in front of her. So if conflict could not be avoided, she would take action. Quoting the first article of her family's military regulations, the girl stated that she needed to kill one combatant quickly to end the conflict and lunged at the three guys with her spear. From such a blow, a huge hole was formed in the wall of the building, through which Xiaojikyu calmly watched the result of her actions. Turning to the stunned Jin, the girl warned that once the duel started, she would kill him as soon as possible to end this conflict. Upon hearing of the girl's deed with the provocateurs, the president was first angry, but then laughed, noting that a simple trick was enough for bragging. The secretary became unbearably ashamed, and she, barely holding back tears, begged the president to stop laughing. Covering her face with her hands, the girl cried, and Yan Jingjing came over to comfort her, returning her lost purse and advising her to be more careful. Chen Qingli, still laughing, expressed disbelief that someone was using the student union's name to provoke, when Feng Ming admitted that he had sent those people himself. The accountant asked if it was worth it to keep sending people to provoke. The student union president advised to forget about it, explaining that after the commotion Xiaojikyu had made, no one would pay attention to them, and suggested waiting for an official duel from teacher Wenjin. After he finished, he let the girls go home and asked the vice president to stay behind. As he passed by, Chen Qingli playfully whispered in his ear, "Take off your clothes." Feng Ming obediently exposed his scarred back at the president's strict order. Chen Jingjing, standing behind him with a belt, began to furiously beat the vice president, asking who asked him to act on his own. He forbade useless communication with others without his permission and started hitting even harder. Grabbing his hair and pulling him to him, the president said he was not interested in the affairs of the college or the student council, "I only have you in my life," he pronounced, licking the wounds on his subordinate's back. "If you continue to disobey, I'll have to kill you. Do you understand?" he asked, to which the subordinate guiltily replied, "Sorry, yes, I understand." A few days later, Zijin met with the secretary of the student council and boasted that after that incident, no one else had come to challenge him. The secretary judiciously pointed out the advantage of judiciously avoiding unnecessary conflicts. "But a battle between us is still inevitable, right?" the young man gently inquired, looking at her carefully. The secretary friendly offered a peaceful friendship in exchange for voluntarily admitting defeat. Teacher Wenjin suddenly appeared in front of them, solemnly announcing the completion of the preparation of the battle venue. The teacher announced the first battle for the re-election of the student council, specifying the participation of Secretary Shajiku. The girl, after hesitating for a bit, stepped forward and confirmed her participation. The teacher asked Zijin who would fight from his side, since as challengers, they could choose the order of appearance. The young man realized that there had been no news since his friends had been sent to training, and didn't know if they would make it in time, or else the first fight would go to him. Linbo suddenly appeared, apologizing for being late due to the long search for the battle site, but luckily she made it in time. Walking up to his friend, he asked how the training went, to which the girl replied, just to let him see her performance. "The first victory will be mine," she declared earnestly, and headed for her opponent. The secretary turned to her opponent and noted their good, trusting relationship with Xiejin. "But on the battlefield, strength comes first in the end," Xiaojiku added. The teacher offered a wordless introduction to the stage and rules of the first battle. Xiejin was astonished to see what awaited his friend. They were to fight on a platform above a mass grave with various weapons sticking out of it. Standing on the mass grave, the soldiers would fight to the death, and only one would be the winner. The teacher drew the students' attention to the countless sharp blades in the pit, capable of cutting iron like dirt, posing a danger when falling. Xiejin thought that despite the intimidating description, the real arena was a platform on top, big enough not to fall. Hearing his reasoning, the teacher turned around and started laughing, for falling was inevitable. He explained that under load, the bricks of the platform would collapse until there was nowhere to stand. The boy noted the strange flavor of the teacher looking very happy. The mentor confirmed that the long overdue re-election of the student council was the biggest event for their department, and the boys should make an old man like him happy. He announced that the first one to pass out and fall off the platform loses, and advised them not to throw their lives away, but to give up beforehand if they doubted success. So the girls entered the arena, and the first fight on the soldier's grave began. The secretary again asked her opponent if she was willing to surrender and avoid the fight. Linbo replied that her swordsman pride wouldn't allow her to lose without a fight. "Then I have nothing more to say. Life and death matter," Jiajiku uttered, and they crossed their weapons. After the first strike, realizing the strength of the diminutive opponent wielding the heavy halberd as lightly as a bamboo. "But it's not that I can't handle it," the girl said as she watched her opponent run at her with the weapon. Linbo solemnly said Lin Shenlu and began to slowly draw the gleaming sword from its sheath. They fought, constantly repelling each other's attacks with different techniques. Shijin's face changed as he noticed Linbo starting to crowd Jiajiku. The teacher explained that the Lin Shen style, created by the talented swordsman Lin Li, was a set of full brutality swordsmanship skills combining strength, agility, and elegance. A true master's legacy. The young man noticed that the girl's sword was different from before, and from the style of Lin Shen he had studied, and wondered if the elder Lin Lei had given her special instructions. The father asked his daughter if she knew why. Despite practicing Lin Shenlu diligently, she was unable to reach the proper height. The frustrated girl said that she was just stupid and needed to be enlightened. Her father explained that Lin Shenlu was a swordsmanship art tailored to his physical training, and by nature a weaker daughter could not use the same techniques to unleash the full power of the sword. The girl was upset, for she should have discovered this truth spoken by her father herself. The father admitted that he had raised his daughter by himself after the early death of his mother, and understood her respect and desire to follow his path perfectly, becoming a swordsman like him, but he did not want to do so. Lin Lei hoped that his daughter would find her own path and become stronger than him. Her father said that the sword changes depending on the strength of the wielder, and instead of competing with him in every move, his daughter should make her movements slower. He added that although her strength would not be enough to cut the boulder yet, but her labors were not in vain, and she already had enough strength to cleave it. Lin Lei prompted to listen to the sound of the sword and think about it. not only as his daughter, but also as Lin Bo's swordsman. Lin Bo skillfully defended herself against every strike from her opponent, who displayed the skills expected from the Xia family guarding the country's borders. Xiaojikyu also tried to skillfully fight back, but her opponent's impenetrable defense prevented her from succeeding. Running through all the thoughts in her head, Ling was confident that she could win now and struck a blow, injuring her opponent. Watching the battle, Xi Jian noted that Lin Bo's sword looked more natural than before. During the past training, the girl's strength wasn't enough to cut a huge boulder in half while facing it. Without giving up, she used different techniques, believing her father's words that her current strength was enough to cleave the rock. Closing her eyes and deciding not to limit the sword with her thoughts, she gave all of herself to the sword in her hand, striking, but once again unsuccessfully. With the infinite power of the sword, like the turbulent water that beats against the boulders day and night, she swung for another strike. This time she succeeded, and the top of the boulder flew off from the force of her blow. The girl shouted, "Lin Shen Liu!" again, putting all her strength and determination into it, and delivered another powerful blow to her opponent. The guy, impressed by her skill and unwavering spirit, loudly announced Lin Bo's unconditional victory. The teacher observed that Lin had found her own style of sword-wielding that was different from Lin Lu's, but it was still not enough. While the student, gathering all her concentration and courage, was about to deliver a decisive blow to the secretary of the student council, the latter, showing incredible stamina and willpower, was able to rise to her feet despite the blows she had received earlier. Not only did her opponent resist the previous blow, but she was also able to prevent Lin Bo from delivering the winning blow by counterattacking. Lin Bo flew off almost to the edge of the arena, frustrated at the missed opportunity for a victory strike due to inattention. During the flight, she had calculated that a quick landing would allow her to gain speed, but time was short. Without wasting a second, she sprinted and threw her deadly weapon with force. The halberd whistled into the arena dangerously close to Lin Bo, shattering a piece of brick with its sharp edges. Following the halberd, its owner appeared out of nowhere and used the inertia of her swift movement to throw Lin Bo away again with a powerful and precise leg kick. Bruised and battered, Lin Bo was able to stand on her feet and spat out blood as she stared at her opponent confidently. The secretary gave her another chance, gesturing for her to approach, and smiled. Gathering her strength, Lin Bo lunged at her opponent, swinging her sword, but was once again disappointed. Xiaojikyu, showing lightning-fast reaction and precision, chipped away at the brick between them at the last moment. Once at a dangerously close distance, she confidently declared that she could completely see through Lin Bo's sword technique. The secretary explained that without enough energy, Lin Bo would not be able to unleash the sword's potential, and taking her face, added that the battlefield, unlike the dojo, was the place where life and death were decided. Shijukyu's victory had led the teacher to think that in the arena, one must consider the environment and fight according to the principles of life and death, which was the main difference between the dojo and the battlefield. Standing over the defeated girl, Xiaojikyu offered her surrender or death, leaving her with only two choices.